Chapter 47. As time went by, Qin Weibai finally left Li Tianlan's arms and took the initiative to hand over the information that he wanted to read but was reluctant to let go of. The carefully bound information was very thick. It was a large stack of A4 paper, densely covered with handwriting, which showed how detailed it was. The Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy were the two most mysterious special warfare academies in Zhongzhou State. Such information was priceless to every student of the Sky Academy. Even if it was spread to the Deep Sea Academy or even abroad, its value would only be higher. The Sky Academy had just finished the entrance maneuver, but Qin Weibai had already prepared this detailed information. From this aspect, it could be seen how terrifying the powerful and detailed intelligence force behind her was. This was not the power that an ordinary strong woman could have. Qin Weibai sat beside Li Tianlan with the information and read it to him. She did not read it from the book. After reading it once, she omitted some unimportant parts and went straight to the subject. She explained the profound in simple terms, which made it easier for Li Tianlan to memorize. But because there was a lot of information, it was almost dinner time when Qin Weibai finished talking about the teachers of the Sky Academy. In this case, the senior teachers of the Sky Academy are basically in a three-way situation. Li Tianlan thought about it seriously and said in a trembling and hoarse voice. The sequelae of forcibly raising the realm in the morning finally began to show completely. His muscles were completely relaxed, and the pain caused by forcibly raising the combat strength spread all over his body. To be exact, it was not pain, but an indescribable emptiness and numbness. It seemed that every muscle, every bone, and every drop of blood in his body had completely disappeared. Li Tianlan could move and speak, but he could hardly feel the existence of his body, nor could he feel the sofa under him. His whole body was indescribably sore and itchy, which made him fall into a state of extreme numbness from the inside out. Such a feeling made him feel extremely uncomfortable, both psychologically and sensually. Most importantly, this feeling was still increasing. It was okay to keep his body still, but once he moved, the pain and the emptiness would spread all over his body, like being pricked by needles. If he didn't move, he would feel sore and numb. If he moved, he would feel severe pain. As this feeling became more and more obvious, Li Tianlan was already sweating all over. You can say that. Qin Weibai nodded. Zhuang Huayang represents the academics, which can be said to be the main force of the academics in Huading. Outside of the Sky Academy, their forces in Huading are not strong enough. Yi Fengqing and the Enchantress represent the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong is good at setting up the overall situation. These two are likely to be important pawns of the Wang family of Beihai's dominance in Huading. Gu Yunxia represents Kunlun City, which is the most awkward among the three. On the surface, they are stronger than Yi Kunlun. But apart from Gu Yunxia, there are only a few weak figures, so they have little say. Gu Weibai Li City. Tianzong on Kunlun of Li City, but she was killed by you. Tianzong Lu Xiong so Xian. And will to she. By of. She stood up and looked at Li Tianlan's trembling body. She changed the subject and said, "Let me give you a massage. It may be uncomfortable, but you'll feel better later." No need. Li Tianlan's lips trembled, but he managed to squeeze out a smile. It was indeed good to enjoy Qin Weibai's massage, but not now. Right now, his body felt like it was being pricked by needles. It was simply suffering. Go on, you can distract me. Trembling, he lit a cigarette, took a deep drag, bit the cigarette butt and said vaguely, "There are 6 groups in Zhongzhou State now. Which group are you from?" Without an all-pervasive intelligence network, Qin Weibai would never have been able to get this information. Such an intelligence network could not be established by ordinary forces. It was normal for her to be connected to one of the 6. I don't belong to any group. Qin Weibai shook her head slightly and looked at Li Tianlan's current situation. Obviously, he wasn't in the mood to go into detail. He just laughed at himself and said, "I'm just using a tiger's skin to scare people. You can think of it as me being the spokesperson of some big shot." A big shot from outside the borders. Li Tianlan's consciousness was already a little fuzzy, But when he heard this sentence, he still became a little spirited. He said reluctantly, "Male or female?" "She can be considered as my elder sister." She rolled her eyes at Li Tianlan and said softly, "She has a great influence in Europe. As soon as I came to Huading, I was targeted by the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, but they didn't do anything to me. It's not that they are afraid of my elder sister, but that the Zhongzhou State government needs my elder sister's influence to achieve some things that are not easy to do in the open. My elder sister also needs the support of the Zhongzhou State government. It can be considered as mutual cooperation and mutual benefit, right? In recent years, I've had a pleasant cooperation with some big shots in Zhongzhou State, but I can't say which group I belong to. Now that the academics are in power, we have a closer relationship with the academics. But I'm also a bosom friend of a core figure in the Dongqing clan, and I'm the only bosom friend. We also have cooperation with the northern faction. To put it nicely, as a spokesperson, I'm relatively aloof. If it's not necessary, the major groups don't want to offend me. But the things I can influence in Zhongzhou State are pitifully few, so I can only manage my own territory." Li Tianlan stared ahead with a dull look in his eyes. The feeling of growing weakness almost overwhelmed his reason, and he didn't know if he had heard what she said. Qin Weibai couldn't bear to look at him anymore. She turned her head and muttered to herself, "If you go abroad to develop your career, you'll start much faster. What a pity." A soft sound came from outside the door. The door was immediately pushed open. Qin Weibai stood up reflexively and walked quickly to the door. Looking at Flaming Fire and Yu Donglai, she asked in a hurried tone, "Where's the thing?" Looking at the anxious expression on the boss's face, Flaming Fire felt more and more powerless. She silently took out a wooden box that smelled of sandalwood from her pocket and handed it to Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai quickly took it and turned to Li Tianlan without hesitation. She took out a small round tube that shone with a metallic luster from the box and carefully fed him the light blue medicine in the tube. There were only about 3 to 5 drops of the light blue liquid medicine. But the moment it entered his mouth, Li Tianlan's tongue, which had been numb and unable to speak, suddenly regained its senses. The medicine entered his throat. A cool feeling entered his stomach. Li Tianlan only felt as if someone had suddenly poured a basin of cold water on him when his whole body was on fire. He felt indescribably comfortable and fortunate. He subconsciously opened his eyes wide and glanced at Qin Weibai. "Don't move. You'll be fine after a while. About 5 minutes." Qin Weibai chuckled softly and said softly. Flaming Fire stood aside expressionlessly. Yu Donglai couldn't help but roll his eyes and said grumpily, "You'll be fine this time. Boy, this is a blessing in disguise. At least you won't have to worry about getting hurt during the few years you're studying at the Sky Academy." Li Tianlan still couldn't speak for a while. He just looked at Yu Donglai in confusion. This is one of the most precious gene potions of the Wang family of Beihai, codenamed Youth. Even the headquarters of the Wang family of Beihai has a limited stock of it. Youth can provide people with a huge amount of vitality. It won't make you live long, but it can quickly heal your injuries. Especially when you take it for the first time, no matter how serious your injuries are, with a large amount of vitality, you can be full of vigor in a short period of time. Moreover, this effect is continuous. A bottle of Youth can maintain the effect for about 3 years. Of course, it's impossible for you to recover immediately in the future. But as long as the effect is still there, you'll recover much faster than others when you're injured in the future. In order to get this, Flaming Fire and I almost fell out with Wang Xiaoyao. "How about it, boy? How does it taste?" Yu Donglai said quickly. Li Tianlan's mouth moved. Finally, he was able to speak. He said with a smile, "It's King bitter." This time, not only Yu Donglai, but also Flaming Fire glared at the bastard who was showing off after getting a bargain. She and Yu Donglai went to Wang Xiaoyao to ask for this bottle of Youth. When he heard that Qin Weibai wanted it, Wang Xiaoyao gave it to Flaming Fire without hesitation. Even Flaming Fire was moved by his straightforwardness. After all, Youth was not like longevity. It could save lives. Not to mention that the effect could last for 3 years. The fact that it could heal injuries almost immediately after taking it for the first time was enough to show how amazing this medicine was. Even if the Wang family of Beihai added up all of them, it was estimated that they didn't have 10 bottles of youth. Even Wang Tianzong would feel distressed for a long time if he took out such a precious thing. But Wang Xiaoyao gave it to Wang Xiaoyao without hesitation. He was really sincere to his boss. However, this Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai was also extremely stingy. When he heard that Qin Weibai wanted to give it to Li Tianlan, his eyes turned red and he regretted it on the spot. Flaming Fire almost fought with Wang Xiaoyao at the garden party. Fortunately, Yu Donglai mediated between them. Later, Xian Xuanzi, a Taoist master who was a guest at the garden party, also said a few words. Then she was allowed to take back the bottle of youth. But this bastard actually said that it was bitter. Don't drink it if it's bitter. If this thing was given to their palace master, it could definitely make their palace master more powerful. Even in the face of an invincible realm expert with 12 murderous weapons, he would not be afraid. Wang Xiaoyao was right. It was a great waste to give this precious thing to Li Tianlan. Only the boss would indulge him like this. Flaming Fire took a deep breath, her face full of resentment. Well, I see that this guy is fine. I should go back. Yu Donglai glanced at Li Tianlan and suddenly said, "Leave after dinner." Qin Weibai stood up and said, "I'm going to cook. The old man can help." She glanced at Li Tianlan and said softly, "Do you want your friend to come over? My cooking skills are no worse than the old man's." "No need. Another day." Li Tianlan smiled and said softly. With a girlfriend like Qin Weibai, he really couldn't wait to show off. But now, he really didn't have the capital to do so. If he called Ning Qianqing and Li Beiyan over, they might even mistake him for living off a woman. Even if he wanted to call them over, he didn't have the confidence to do so. Qin Weibai looked at him deeply, nodded, and walked to the kitchen. The dinner was not too sumptuous. Qin Weibai and Yu Donglai made a few home-cooked dishes and boiled a pot of congee with pork and century eggs, which had a special taste. The effect of youth against the natural order had already come into play before dinner. The pain caused by Li Tianlan forcibly raising his realm had disappeared. Even the injuries left by the entrance maneuver seemed to have completely disappeared. With a great appetite, he sat at the dining table and looked at Qin Weibai from time to time. He really experienced what it meant to be a feast for the eyes. He finished nearly half of the large pot of congee with pork and century eggs by himself. After dinner, Qin Weibai ordered Flaming Fire to send Yu Donglai. The old man looked at Li Tianlan playfully and did not refuse. He walked out of the villa with Flaming Fire. Outside the window, it was already night. At the dining table, Qin Weibai elegantly finished the last mouthful of congee and put down the bowl and chopsticks. Li Tianlan instinctively wanted to clear the table. He had done this kind of thing countless times in Li's village and had long been used to it. "I'm here. The kitchen is not a place for men." Qin Weibai stopped Li Tianlan. Her voice was soft and insistent. Li Tianlan stuttered for a long time before he finally said, "You've worked hard. I'm very happy that you've eaten my cooking," Qin Weibai said in a light tone. Then she got up and began to clear the dishes. Li Tianlan silently walked back to the living room. He took out a cigarette and lit it. Listening to the sounds coming from the kitchen, he could not tell what he was feeling. The cigarette was almost finished. Qin Weibai came to the living room after washing the dishes. Looking at Li Tianlan sitting in the dark, she turned on the light and said softly, "Do you want to watch TV for a while? I'll continue to read the materials." Li Tianlan smiled and said, perhaps it was because there was no electricity at the border, Li Tianlan was not very interested in all kinds of electrical appliances. Qin Weibai nodded casually and said casually, "I'm going to take a shower. Cooking will smell good. When I come out, I'll continue to read to you." Take a shower? Li Tianlan's heart jumped slightly. He swallowed subconsciously, nodded calmly, and picked up the materials next to him. But this time, he could not read any more before he even finished 2 pages of the materials. The living room was quiet. There was no sound of Qin Weibai taking a shower. But when he thought that his goddess was taking a shower, his heart was in a mess, as if there was grass growing in it. He put down the materials, stayed for a while, shook his head, and continued to smoke. But he became more and more absent-minded. The incomparably long 40 minutes finally passed. Qin Weibai returned to the living room in a white bathrobe with her long hair hanging down. At this moment, she seemed to have completely lost the sharp and indifferent aura. There was only a kind of charm and laziness that belonged to a domestic woman. She was breathtakingly beautiful. The two of them looked at each other. Qin Weibai looked at the materials that Li Tianlan put aside and chuckled. "Why don't you read them?" "I can't read them anymore." Li Tianlan was frank and said with a wry smile. "What do you think I think?" Qin Weibai blinked. Her big watery eyes were indescribably seductive, almost drawing out Li Tianlan's soul. A man and a woman alone. Li Tianlan swallowed with difficulty and turned his head to one side. "Do you still feel inferior?" Qin Weibai came to Li Tianlan and asked softly. "I don't know." Li Tianlan shook his head and answered honestly. He was really a little confused. He did not know whether it was because he felt too inferior or because Qin Weibai's extreme charm brought him too much pressure. "I really have a way to solve your problem now." Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Tianlan and said softly. "What?" Li Tianlan raised his head subconsciously and saw that Qin Weibai, who was standing in front of him, had long been blushing. Qin Weibai did not speak. She just moved forward again, reached out her hand, and gently but firmly pushed Li Tianlan onto the sofa. A trace of rich and natural body fragrance floated into Li Tianlan's nostrils. He looked dull. Qin Weibai turned off the light. Vaguely, the white bathrobe seemed to be slipping gently. Qin Weibai crawled over and hugged Li Tianlan tightly. In the darkness, the two of them looked at each other again. Qin Weibai's breathing was rapid, and her eyes were shining. Her sweet voice, which was close to a whisper, rang in Li Tianlan's ears. It trembled slightly, like the sound of nature. "The woman that Wang Xiaoyao has pursued for several years without getting a response, you only met her twice, and then you slept with her. Fool, what else do you have to feel inferior about?" Chapter 48. When Li Tianlan regained consciousness, he only felt that his mouth and nose were full of natural, intoxicating and familiar fragrance. The sun was shining outside the window. Even with his eyes closed, he could feel the bright light outside the window. This made Li Tianlan feel a little lost and a little reluctant. That crazy and dreamy night had passed. At this moment, it was already a new day. Li Tianlan quietly took a deep breath and opened his eyes directly, just in time to see a pair of bright eyes that were also quietly looking at him. This was the most beautiful pair of eyes Li Tianlan had ever seen. There was a hint of coldness in the brightness and softness, but there was no sharpness in them. It was said that the eyes were the window to the soul. Looking through this window, Li Tianlan could only see a kind of strong persistence and deep affection. This was his woman. Li Tianlan told himself silently, and then said with a smile, "Morning. It's almost 10 o'clock. It's getting late." Qin Weibai lay beside Li Tianlan and chuckled. The thin cashmere quilt covered the curve of her body, and only a part of her snow-white shoulder was exposed in the air, which was very attractive. Li Tianlan directly reached out and held her in his arms. The two bodies were close together. He gently kissed Qin Weibai's ear, and then sighed and whispered, "When I woke up just now, I didn't dare to open my eyes. I even thought that last night was just a wet dream, and when I woke up, there would be nothing left." In fact, it was not only last night. Even now, he felt that everything was so beautiful that it was almost unreal. Qin Weibai's wildness, Qin Weibai's obedience, Qin Weibai's lovable charm, and Qin Weibai's unwillingness to resist. The scenes of last night kept replaying in his mind, and finally, the image of Qin Weibai holding him tightly and crying silently was fixed. Last night, Li Tianlan was extremely satisfied both physically and mentally. But what impressed him most was that when they went from the living room to the bedroom, Qin Weibai, who endured his attack, insisted on looking at him with tears in her eyes. She looked a little wronged, but also a little relieved. At that time, Qin Weibai was delicate and lovely. At that time, Li Tianlan was as crazy as a beast. But when everything calmed down and he recalled the way Qin Weibai looked at him and cried quietly, Li Tianlan felt an indescribable pain in his heart. He couldn't tell what kind of sadness and grievance were contained in those eyes, and he didn't know what Qin Weibai was thinking about. But from then on, Qin Weibai became completely crazy and seductive. Not long after dinner, they tossed and turned until midnight. At 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the two struggled to take a shower before falling asleep in each other's arms. Li Tianlan's eyes were in a trance. He unconsciously stroked Qin Weibai's smooth and delicate back and muttered to himself again, "It's like a dream." "So you want to do it again?" Qin Weibai raised her head from his arms and looked at him with her big bright eyes without blinking. She said with a faint smile. Li Tianlan was excited, but that was all. Last night, he played too crazily, and now he was really powerless. It didn't feel much to lie flat on his back, but as soon as he turned sideways, even with a warm and fragrant body in his arms, he couldn't hide the numbness in his waist. "Forget it. Let's rest first. Another day." Li Tianlan shook his head. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt that the words, "another day," were really exquisite. He laughed, let go of Qin Weibai, and sat up on the bed. Almost at the same time, Qin Weibai also took Li Tianlan's clothes. Her movements were obviously a little inconvenient. Not to mention a woman who didn't know martial arts, even if she was an expert of the invincible realm and had just experienced the first time in her life, the pain couldn't be ignored. She gently bit her lower lip and insisted on getting up. It seemed that she wanted to help Li Tianlan put on his clothes. "I can do it myself." Li Tianlan subconsciously wanted to take the clothes. Looking at Qin Weibai's pale face because of the pain, he suddenly remembered the blood stain on the sofa, which represented a woman's chastity. Last night, he was so focused on fooling around that he didn't have time to clean up the battlefield. He guessed that Flaming Fire had seen it. At the thought of this, his heart suddenly felt a little strange. "I'll help you." Qin Weibai clenched the clothes in her hand and gently shook her head, but her attitude was extremely firm. "I think this is also what a wife should do. Camouflage clothes are relatively easy. If you wear a suit in the future, I'll help you wear a tie every day, okay?" Li Tianlan nodded with a dull look on his face. Looking at Qin Weibai, who got out of the quilt to help him put on his clothes, he understood for the first time what it meant to have a room full of spring. Qin Weibai, who gently helped Li Tianlan put on his clothes, also blushed. From time to time, she had to endure Li Tianlan's perverted hands. He could bully her so much in just one night. Was he still the bastard who said yesterday that he felt inferior when facing her? It took nearly half an hour to get dressed. When Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai, whose walking posture was obviously a little unnatural, walked out of the bedroom, it was close to 11 o'clock in the morning. Flaming Fire was sitting in the living room, looking through some documents. When she saw Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai coming out one after another, her expression changed. She glared at Li Tianlan fiercely, as if she was looking at a pile of cow dung stuck in a flower. She could not imagine that the boss could be so crazy, nor could she imagine that Li Tianlan would be so lustful. She had only gone to send Yu Donglai, and it had only been 2 hours. When she came back, this bastard had actually eaten up the boss, and so thoroughly. She naturally knew what the bloodstain on the sofa meant. Even if she did not know, the noise they made last night was not small. Flaming Fire's room was next to Qin Weibai's. As long as one was not deaf, they could know what happened in the master bedroom last night. Noticing Flaming Fire's murderous look, Li Tianlan smiled and was not angry. Qin Weibai had become his woman, and in the future, such looks would probably be very common. Even if he did not like it, he had to get used to it. Qin Weibai obviously also noticed the change in Flaming Fire's mood, but she did not say anything. She just tilted her head to look at Li Tianlan and said softly, "Are you having lunch at home?" Li Tianlan nodded and said, "I have 2 brothers who seem to still be living at a relative's house. I'll go find them after lunch." Qin Weibai trotted downstairs. Hearing that Li Tianlan had no intention of taking her, she pursed her lips and seemed a little disappointed, but she did not say anything. She just nodded meekly and said to Flaming Fire, who had already gotten up from the sofa, "I'm a little unwell today. You cook lunch at noon." Don't be salty, make it spicy. She was obviously taking care of Li Tianlan's taste. Flaming Fire glanced at Li Tianlan expressionlessly, nodded, and went straight to the kitchen. Li Tianlan's scalp went numb. Looking at the look in her eyes, he even thought that it was possible that Flaming Fire had drugged the lunch. It was not highly toxic, but something like laxatives. Flaming Fire could definitely do it. Qin Weibai frowned and carefully sat on the sofa. She took her bag, took out a card from it, and handed it to Li Tianlan. She said softly, "There's some money on the card, but there's no password. Take it. Hooting is not like the Sky Academy. Money is waste paper in the Sky Academy, but it's different in Hooting. You can't do anything without money." Li Tianlan did not stand on ceremony. He took the card and put it in his pocket. He had no concept of money since he was a child. Moreover, it was Qin Weibai who gave him the money. Last night, he took away her most precious thing, which could not be measured by money. It would be unreasonable to hesitate over a card. This is a really strange feeling. Li Tianlan smiled and said casually, "I'm yours. What I have is naturally also yours. What's so strange about it?" Qin Weibai leaned against Li Tianlan's arms, squinting, her face languid and coquettish. Li Tianlan tightened his arms around her and slightly narrowed his eyes. He changed from a boy to a man in Qin Weibai's arms. It seemed that Qin Weibai had also activated all his ambitions. Before, he had always regarded it as his responsibility to bring his grandfather and the others out of the border. However, in less than half a month since he came to Hooting, he had learned about the general trend of Zhongzhou State, experienced the domineering nature of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City, and felt Qin Weibai's gentleness. All of these had completely transformed in the madness last night. Bring Grandpa and those uncles out of the border? It should be so. But it was more than that. Reverse the verdict for his father? It was also more than that. Holding Qin Weibai in his arms, Li Tianlan had an unprecedented desire to be strong and to have power. This desire was so strong that it was like weeds growing in his heart. The wind was blowing. The whole grassland was shaking violently. Li Tianlan's heart was burning, but his eyes were getting quieter. Time passed in silence. It was not until Flaming Fire called them to eat that Li Tianlan suddenly came to his senses. He lowered his head. Qin Weibai, who had been silent for a long time, did not fall asleep. She just quietly leaned against Li Tianlan's arms and looked at him without blinking. Her eyes were as gentle as water. "I'll carry you over." Li Tianlan took the initiative to speak. Qin Weibai nodded obediently and reached out to put her arms around his neck. Flaming Fire was efficient in cooking, but the taste of the food made Li Tianlan want to cry. He did not know if her cooking skills were really not that good, or if she had deliberately misheard Qin Weibai's words, but the 6 dishes for lunch were all too salty. As for chili, Li Tianlan did not see any at all. Qin Weibai tasted the dishes, looked at Flaming Fire, and continued to eat. But the frequency at which she picked up food was much slower. Li Tianlan could not stand the salty feeling that made his lips numb. He hastily ate 2 bowls of rice and got up. Flaming Fire, who was eating slowly, glanced at him. Her expression was still cold, but there was a hint of a mocking smile in her eyes. Li Tianlan, who was keenly aware of this, was angry. He stopped and directly bent down to kiss Qin Weibai on the face. Then he laughed and went out, feeling refreshed. Flaming Fire gnashed her teeth and could not eat anymore. She sat on the chair with dinner in her hands, lost in thought. Qin Weibai smiled and did not wipe the oil stains left by Li Tianlan on her face. She just put down the bowl and said in a flat tone, "The dishes are salty." "I know," Flaming Fire said in a low voice and did not refute anything. "He doesn't like it." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and spoke again. Flaming Fire, who had thought that she would be reprimanded by her boss, almost broke down. She could not help but raise her head and ask, "Boss, what's so good about him?" She knew that she should not ask this question. As one of the 12 super masters of Samsara Palace, if it were horsewoman or military counselor, they would never ask this question and dare not ask it. But Flaming Fire was different. She had followed Qin Weibai for several years, and the relationship between the two of them as superiors and subordinates had become like that of sisters. In her opinion, Li Tianlan might have amazing potential, but he was absolutely not worthy of the boss. But in fact, the boss had not only been ruined by him, but also seemed to have been bewitched by him. She was simply obedient to him. If Flaming Fire could really be at peace, then she would really have no temper at all. Qin Weibai glanced at her and said with a chuckle, "My man is naturally the best." She paused and continued, "The best." Flaming Fire put down the bowl and chopsticks and continued to be in a daze. "Flaming Fire, be polite to Tianlan in the future." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and said again, "Otherwise, I don't mind sending you to Europe to carry out other tasks." Flaming Fire's body trembled slightly. She lowered her head and said dejectedly, "I will pay attention in the future." Qin Weibai nodded and did not dwell on this matter. She changed the topic and said, "Did you miss anything about Tianlan in the Sky Academy?" Flaming Fire said in an affirmative tone. Qin Weibai was very concerned about Li Tianlan's situation in the Sky Academy. In the Sky Academy, she would report everything related to Li Tianlan to Qin Weibai as soon as she got the news. Qin Weibai nodded and whispered, "The Lu family of Huading, Gu Yunxia, and the Wang family of Beihai, whose position is difficult to determine in the future." She frowned and seemed to be a little hesitant. "Outside, there are Horsewoman's secret protection. In the Sky Academy, there is Zhuang Huayang's protection. They dare not do anything." Flaming Fire said, "It's still not safe. When they go crazy, what can't they do?" Qin Weibai shook her head and was silent for a few seconds. She suddenly asked, "Doesn't the Sky Academy want to choose the person in charge of their assassination course in Sai City? Has the candidate been decided?" "I don't know yet." Flaming Fire hesitated and said directly, "It's hard for us to collect information about Sai City." "Then you go to Sai City." Qin Weibai said decisively, "Help me take a message to the city lord." Flaming Fire raised her eyebrows in surprise and felt somewhat inexplicable. The Samsara Palace had no conflict with Sai City in the past, but they had no interaction at all. "Forget it. I'd better write it on paper. You go to Sai City in person and give it to Situ Tsangyue." Qin Weibai shook her head and looked at Flaming Fire seriously. She said calmly, "You must give it to her in person." Flaming Fire nodded with a solemn face. Qin Weibai found a pen and paper and wrote 2 short lines. Then she put it in an envelope and handed it to Flaming Fire. She said, "You go now. I'll ask the military counselor to protect Tianlan for the time being and let Horsewoman protect me. There will be no problem." Flaming Fire took the envelope and said yes. Then she left the villa without hesitation. Qin Weibai sat alone in the dining room and watched Flaming Fire's back through the French window. She did not speak for a long time. She did not know whether Flaming Fire's trip was a blessing or a curse for her and Li Tianlan. But some things had to be made and even gambled. It could be foreseen that whether Flaming Fire's trip succeeded or not, there would be another force in the Sky Academy in the future. A force that belonged to Sai City outside the control of the Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and the academics. This influence would be extremely huge, both in the future and in the present. Outside the window, the sun was shining, birds were singing, and flowers were fragrant. Chapter 49. In Huading, compared with the garden party where a membership card could represent one's status, the existence of Hanyu Palace was even less known. Hanyu Palace's history predated the garden party by many years. It was originally approved in the name of a clubhouse, but today, many years later, it still had not issued any membership card to the outside world. Hanyu Palace covered an area of nearly 200 acres. It was not big and could even be described as exquisite. A clubhouse of this size was undoubtedly somewhat unpresentable in Huading. But if one looked at it from the perspective of size, every corner of this place could be said to be extremely perfect. Hanyu Palace was located in the western suburbs of Huading, facing northeast from southwest. In terms of feng shui, it was a standard paradise with a golden throne, a pagoda, and a cornucopia. It was backed by a high mountain and had a broad prospect. It could be said to be a blessed land that could ensure eternal peace. Everything inside here was also the work of a feng shui master in Zhengzhou State. To exaggerate, every grass and every tree here was very particular. Different from the antique style of the garden party, everything here was developed toward modernization, pursuing extreme luxury and delicacy. The main building in the center of Hanyu Palace covered an area of nearly 5,000 square meters and was 6 stories high. More than 2/3 of it was built with glass, surrounded by an artificial lake. The main building stood in the center of the lake, looking noble and elegant. When the weather was good, the surrounding green water, green mountains, blue sky, and white clouds could be clearly reflected on every piece of glass of the main building. Under the reflection of the sun, it was as gorgeous as a work of art. There were also a few small and exquisite villas surrounding the main building. They protected the main building from a subtle angle. These were the residences of the service staff and security personnel. Looking down from the sky, the entire Hanyu Palace was shaped like a cold moon. It was curved in an ingenious manner. The middle was wide and the sides were narrow. Every part of the interior was arranged just right. It gave off a grand and strict feeling. However, such a blessed land was usually empty most of the time. There were less than 30 attendants in charge of cleaning the place. The entire Frost Moon Palace did not receive any guests, so it was deserted throughout the year. Only very rarely would it be bustling with activity. Therefore, it was more appropriate to say that Hanyu Palace was the temporary imperial residence of a big shot rather than a clubhouse. The weather was fine. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a middle-aged man who looked about 50 years old appeared at the gate of Hanyu Palace. He wore an extremely large black robe, and his entire body was shrouded in the black robe. Not to mention his appearance, even his figure was not obvious under the cover of the black robe. The strange black-robed man walked through the door carved with a cold moon, walked across the exquisite arch bridge that spanned the entire artificial lake, and arrived at the door of the main building without any obstruction. A woman of unknown age stood in front of the door, looking at the black-robed man slowly approaching with a sincere smile. The woman's appearance was ordinary, but her temperament was as gentle as the water of a lake. She was wearing a light white cheongsam and stood elegantly in front of the door, like a lady from a rich and powerful family. "Rose, is second master here?" The black-robed man came before the woman and asked in a low voice. "He's upstairs reading and hasn't slept all night. If you still haven't returned, second master will probably send me to find you." The woman with the code name Rose's voice was gentle and elegant. She was not in a hurry, and she exuded an intellectual aura. Her appearance was not outstanding, but her skin was extremely white and delicate. At first glance, it was not a problem to say that she was in her 20s, and it did not seem wrong to say that she was in her 30s. The black-robed man's body stiffened slightly. He nodded and walked directly through the door of the temporary imperial residence. The decoration inside the temporary imperial residence was the complete opposite of the outside world. It was filled with an ancient style, but it was not purely ancient. It was a bit like the style of the Republic of China from hundreds of years ago. It was dignified and grand, and it looked like it had a lot of history. The black-robed man silently walked up the redwood steps in the hall to the 3rd floor and stood in front of a door. "Is it Black Robe? Come in." A low and gentle voice rang out from the room. It was clear even through the extremely soundproof room. The black-robed man pushed the door open and entered. Behind the door was a large room of nearly 150 square meters. A crimson carpet covered every corner of the room, and the ceiling was painted with gold as decoration, spreading wantonly and carelessly over the entire ceiling. The 4 walls were all made of glass, and a huge red sandalwood bookcase took up almost all the space on one wall. The bookcase that exuded the fragrance of sandalwood was filled with books and all kinds of antiques. 2 leather sofas were placed randomly in front of the window on the other side, and in the middle was a chessboard. The room was completely dark. The floor-to-ceiling window had excellent lighting, but it was now tightly blocked by the curtains. Visibility in the entire room was extremely low. The black-robed man followed the weak light to the sofa and sat down. He continued to remain silent. The mission failed? In the darkness, the gentle and deep voice continued to ring out. In the extremely poor light, his voice seemed to come from all directions, and it was impossible to determine his exact location. Yes. The black-robed man finally spoke, and his voice was dry. I'm sorry, Second Master. Don't blame yourself. I've been mentally prepared. The Second Master seemed to smile, and his deep voice echoed in the room, light as a feather. Wang Yuetong's identity is extraordinary. It would be best if we could kill her, but it's not surprising that we failed. What happened to the assassination team? All of them were wiped out. The black-robed man's facial muscles visibly twitched, and his voice was hoarse. In an environment where the black-robed man could not see, the Second Master muttered to himself. After a long while, he said slowly, "That's good. Then there won't be any clues left." He was silent again for a while, and suddenly asked, "Who was the bodyguard of Wang Yuetong?" "It was the enchantress." The black-robed man's voice was cold and gloomy. But the enchantress did not show up. The one who resisted the assassination for Wang Yuetong this time was a young man who was with her. The Second Master did not speak, and just quietly waited for the black-robed man to continue. 3 swords. The black-robed man's voice suddenly became agitated. His voice trembled slightly, with indescribable hatred. The opponent forcibly raised his realm from the chi-controlling realm to the fire-flaming realm. With only 3 swords, the assassination team was wiped out. The chi-controlling realm. The Second Master's voice finally carried a hint of surprise and doubt. Listening to the black-robed man's unusual tone, the Second Master, who knew his old subordinate well, took a deep breath and calmly said, "Do you know those 3 swords?" "I recognize 1 sword." The black-robed man's voice became hoarser. In the darkness, his body trembled slightly, with a kind of heartfelt palpitations and resentment. He reached out his hand through the black robe and touched the hideous scar on his face. He laughed miserably. "The 9th blade of Eventide. I'll never forget that sword for the rest of my life. Seeing it again today, it's like a dream." The room suddenly fell silent. The Second Master was silent for a long time. The black-robed man sat quietly on the sofa, in a trance like a soulless puppet. The 9th blade of Eventide. To others, this sword might only represent a unique skill of some once invincible realm legacy, but to him, it was a nightmare that he never wanted to mention again. 20 years ago, the black-robed man was the most powerful genius in the organization. Even the leaders of the organization thought that he had the potential to be invincible. At the age of 33, he entered the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. How high-spirited was he back then? Even the organization had trained him as a candidate for the position of a new leader. At that time, the black-robed man wholeheartedly wanted to rush into the invincible realm that all martial artists dreamed of and become one of the strongest people in the dark world. That was when he was at his craziest. He was so crazy that he took the initiative to carry out the top-secret mission within the organization, to go to the border of Zhongzhou State and besiege a young heavenly son of Zhongzhou State who had already entered the invincible realm. 3 invincible realm experts from various forces led the team, and more than 10 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm assisted them. They even deployed a murderous weapon. That was the most tragic and soul-stirring battle in the black-robed man's memory. The blood of a large number of elites spilled on the battlefield, the experts lay dead, the sword light soared into the sky, and the murderous weapon roared. The black-robed man was a direct participant in that siege. Although he was at the periphery, he also had the most direct experience of the invincible realm expert's demeanor, and also the sword that changed the weather. The black-robed man laughed and cried, looking crazy. He still remembered that he was still dozens of meters away from the center of the battlefield, but the 36-year-old invincible realm expert directly swung his sword at a group of thunder-shocking realm experts while being besieged. The 9th blade of Eventide. The invincible sword intent surged. The several thunder-shocking realm experts standing at the forefront did not even move from a distance of dozens of meters. They were directly torn to pieces by the huge sword energy. The black-robed man himself could not have been spared, but when he was about to despair, A woman who had been by his side since his debut took the sword for him. After she was smashed to pieces, the aftermath of the sword energy did not dissipate. After rushing through, it destroyed half of his face. From then on, he became the black-robed man. The woman he once treasured the most was dead, and the one he saved was equivalent to a useless person. For many years, under the shadow of that sword, not only did he not break through to the invincible realm, but his realm did not even advance. Now, there was still a small distance between the true peak of the thunder-shocking realm. The black-robed man gritted his teeth and suddenly said, "Second Master, I want to kill him." "Speak clearly." The second master's voice was still gentle in the darkness, but with a hint of irresistible majesty. The black-robed man seemed to realize that he was speaking incoherently. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He said, "Wang Yuetong and that guy were very clever. As soon as they realized that something was wrong, they wanted to run. I stopped their car, but I was targeted. It was the military counselor." "Which military counselor?" The second master's voice sounded a little helpless. It seemed that the ninth blade of Eventide had not only stopped them from assassinating Wang Yuetong, but also made the black-robed man a little too excited. Up until now, the appearance of the enchantress made more sense. The ninth blade of Eventide and this so-called military counselor were completely inexplicable. The military counselor of Samsara. The black-robed man paused, then continued, "The one with the military counselor should be Horsewoman. I didn't dare to get too close, so I can't be sure." The second master did not speak for a long time. In the dark world today, the experts of the invincible realm were naturally unparalleled, but some special experts of the thunder-shocking realm were also shining brightly. The 12 super masters of Samsara were like that. The enchantress of the Wang family of Beihai was like that. Now, suddenly hearing that the military counselor and horsewoman of Samsara were also at the scene of the assassination, the second master was surprised, but more than that, he felt a headache. For a moment, he even felt that the assassination was a trap that someone had set for him. But as soon as this thought emerged, he forcibly suppressed it. "I heard that Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai has been pursuing Qin Weibai. Could it be that he succeeded?" The second master was silent for a while before he spoke to himself. There was something very strange hidden in his tone. "If my observation is correct, the military counselor is not protecting Wang Yuetong, but the little bastard beside her." The black-robed man gnashed his teeth and said, "After the military counselor found me, I retreated immediately and was chased by him for a day. Not long ago, he seemed to have received some order and disappeared. If not, I would still be playing hide-and-seek with him outside." "Have you fought with him?" The second master asked. "How is the military counselor's strength?" Among the 12 super masters of Samsara, Saint ranked first. His degree of mystery was comparable to that of the palace master. Immediately after Saint was the military counselor. No one had seen the military counselor in action, and they didn't even know whether he was a man or a woman. Now that the assassination had failed, it was at least a gain to see the military counselor. "Unfathomable." The black-robed man hesitated and said slowly, "It was a man. He was mysterious, and I couldn't see his face clearly. I fought with him for 2 moves and almost lost." As he said this, he was filled with indignation. If it was not because the sword attack he had personally experienced 20 years ago had shattered his martial will and caused him to be in a muddle-headed state for so many years, he would definitely not be any weaker than the military counselor. The second master grunted in the dark, deep in thought. The ninth blade of Eventide. The Samsara Palace. The Wang family of Beihai. Everything seemed to be connected. The second master didn't understand what was going on, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he seemed to have found a more suitable entry point than Wang Yuetong. "Second master, let me kill him." The black-robed man's ferocious voice sounded again. He knew his current situation. In terms of martial arts, this was almost a standard inner demon. 20 years ago, the ninth swordsman had shattered his martial will and shattered all of his confidence. After struggling for so many years, he had finally managed to regain his footing. In the end, he saw the ninth swordsman again today. Although it was immature, It still contained boundless sword will. This sword would forever be an obstacle in his heart. Only by killing that guy would his state of mind be more peaceful, and he might even advance his martial arts. Is it really the ninth blade? The second master suddenly asked. If it's really the ninth blade, it means that the young man is the current inheritor of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. That's strange. I heard that Li Honghe had a granddaughter, but she was killed not long after she was born. He should have no descendants. What's wrong with this young man? Is he an outsider? Is Li Honghe really willing to teach such an important unique technique to an outsider? If the Li family really has an inheritor, then how did the Li family get involved with the Samsara Palace? The two super masters are secretly protecting him. It seems that this young man is also very important to the Samsara Palace. Second master. The black-robed man interrupted the second master's monologue and said anxiously, I'll do it cleanly. I won't do it unless I'm absolutely sure. Let me kill him. Kill him? The second master asked in reply and said softly, It shouldn't be difficult for you to kill a young man, but how are you going to deal with the super master of Samsara beside him? You seem to be no match for him, be it military counselor or horsewoman. You can't let me do it myself, can you? Since he can be with Wang Yuetong, he must be a freshman of the Sky Academy. Are you going to sneak into the Sky Academy? How long can you hold on under Zhuang Huayang's attack? Oh, I forgot that there is Yu Donglai in Huading. He is also an old subordinate of Li Honghe. It seems that it doesn't take much effort for Yu Donglai to kill you. Kill him? How are you going to kill him? Please help me, second master. The black-robed man suddenly got up and knelt heavily on the ground. In the darkness, his body trembled violently. His forehead touched the carpet hard and he said again, Please help me, second master. When will Gu Qianchuan come to Huading? The second master asked casually, not knowing if he had seen the black-robed man kneeling on the ground. Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City and the second invincible realm expert of Kunlun City. Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City and known as the god of war of Zhongzhou State, had spent most of his time in the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State in recent years. The affairs in Kunlun City were basically handled by Gu Qianchuan. The black-robed man stopped kowtowing and said softly, In about 3 or 4 days, no more than 5 days, he will come to meet you. 3 or 5 days? Very good. I received a secret report that Wang Xingxiao, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, is about to break through the fire-flaming realm and enter the thunder-shocking realm. Wang Tianzong is ready to take him to the desert. Now that Wang Yuetong is attacked, it is estimated that Wang Tianzong will also come to Huading in 3 or 5 days. I am afraid that it will be very lively then. The second master chuckled softly, his tone low and cold. The black-robed man hesitated and said tentatively, Second master, do you want to expose the boy's identity and origin? Idiot! The second master snorted. If we expose his origin, it is basically tantamount to admitting that we attacked Wang Yuetong. What are you thinking about? Moreover, Wang Tianzong handles everything flawlessly. If we expose the other party's identity, even if it is just for show, Wang Tianzong will temporarily protect him. At that time, it will be more inconvenient for us to take action. The black-robed man lowered his head slightly and said nothing. There is still enough time. You and Rose leave Hanyu Palace now. I will transfer Moonlight here. Rose and Moonlight will entangle military counselor and horsewoman. You know what to do, don't you? The second master took a deep breath and asked softly. Understood. The black-robed man trembled and kowtowed heavily. Thank you, second master, for your help. The second master, whose body was always hidden in the darkness, said flatly, Go ahead. The black-robed man stood up and cautiously left the dark study. In the dark study, the second master sat in his seat and thought silently. Gu Qianchuan, Wang Tianzong, and a descendant of the Li family who was highly valued by the Samsara Palace. The Li family, Kunlun City, and the Wang family had complicated grievances. If this key figure was killed, what should the 4 or even more forces do? The second master chuckled, lit a cigarette, and said softly, The more chaotic, the better. The cigarette butt flickered. In the faint light, There was an elegant and cold middle-aged face. He leaned against the leather sofa behind him and muttered to himself, "The dark world without the Li family is really lonely." Chapter 50. According to Li Tianlan's original guess, after leaving the Sky Academy, Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing would either enjoy themselves in some high-class clubhouse similar to the garden party, or have fun in another similar venue. Both of them undoubtedly had the capital, be it in status or financial resources, especially Li Beidian. As one of the 4 great sword masters of Mount Shu, although he was young, his seniority was not low at all. With such a status, he could do whatever he wanted on most occasions. There was no special treatment in the Sky Academy. But outside the Sky Academy, Li Beidian could get whatever he wanted. He could travel in a luxury car and live a luxurious life. He had said before the vacation that in Huading, as long as he, the great sword master Li, waved his hand, there was no girl he couldn't get. Li Tianlan believed this, and it was precisely because of this that he felt that after leaving the Sky Academy, the days of the two would be quite colorful. But the reality was completely different from Li Tianlan's imagination. When he called Ning Qianxing, he was actually playing billiards with Li Beidian. The venue was not some high-class clubhouse, but Huating University. For Li Tianlan, who had never attended a formal school, Huating University was definitely a very novel place. It was also a place that made him envious. So, after hanging up the phone, he hailed a cab and rushed to Huating University. He was in high spirits. The inside of Huating University was full of people. Compared to the desolate Sky Academy, the inside of Huating University was like a bustling city. Students and teachers of Huating University were everywhere, laughing and talking in groups. It was a scene of prosperity. In April, the temperature in Huating was far from hot. In fact, it could be said to be pleasant. However, standing at the gate of Huating University, Li Tianlan's eyes were filled with black silk skirts and short skirts. Putting aside the beauty of the girls, the beautiful legs clad in black silk were a sight to behold. He even began to imagine how dreamy it would be for Qin Weibai to wear black silk on the bed. As soon as this thought came to him, he could no longer control it. For a moment, Li Tianlan even had the urge to turn around and go back to try it out. Given Qin Weibai's obedient personality, he believed that she would not refuse him. At the gate of Huating University, Li Tianlan, who was wearing a camouflage uniform, smirked and subconsciously wiped the corner of his mouth. "What are you thinking? You're drooling. What, are you attracted to the girls of Huating University? How about I bring you along to harvest some? As I said before, in Huating, as long as you wave your hand, there is no girl that you can't get." A palm suddenly patted on Li Tianlan's shoulder. Li Beidian laughed in a low voice, which was indescribably wretched. Li Tianlan suddenly came to his senses and casually said with a smile, "I was thinking that you guys came too late. It's been 10 minutes since the agreed time." "You're drooling over this?" Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing came to Li Tianlan with strange looks in their eyes. "I didn't drool, but I did swallow." Ning Qianxing added another blow without batting an eyelid. "Cough." Li Tianlan coughed and stiffly changed the topic. "Why you here? Experience college life?" At the mention of this, Li Beidian suddenly became excited. His eyebrows danced and the expression on his skinny, skeleton-like face was so wonderful that he even forgot about Li Tianlan swallowing. He chuckled and said, "Brother Tough has a cousin who goes to school here. He's an honest guy. He said he wanted to introduce me to a pink girl. It's said that she's the campus belle of Huating University. He's waiting for me to harvest her." Let me tell you, Tianlan, although Huating University is not ranked at the top in Zhengzhou State, in terms of the quality of girls, it is definitely one of the top universities. Have you heard that the beauties of Huating University are talented and poetic? Not to mention the quality of the campus belle of Huating University. Li Tianlan shook his head subconsciously. He had never heard that the beauties of Huating University were talented and poetic, nor did he feel it. From the border to Huating and the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan really felt like he was in a cluster of flowers. Qin Weibai, Wang Yuetong, Qin Ku, Flaming Fire, Yu Qinyan, the enchantress of the Wang family of Beihai, and even Lu Dongyu were all beauties with their own characteristics. They dazzled him. Now, standing at the gate of Huading University and watching beautiful or ordinary women walk past him, Li Tianlan had an illusion that he had finally come from the immortal world to the mortal world. The feeling of being surrounded by beautiful women was not bad, but it was not as vivid as this kind of scene in front of him. Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and handed it to Li Baidian and Ning Qianqing. He smiled and said, "Let's go and see the beautiful girl waiting for you to harvest. It's almost time. Let's go, I'll take you there." Li Baidian laughed and took a drag. He looked at the cigarette in his hand and said, "This cigarette is good. I've seen my senior brother smoke it. It's a specialty of the Wang family of Beihai. Yuetong gave it to you, right?" "No." Li Tianlan's smile froze slightly. He shook his head and said in a flat tone, "This guy is always carefree. He doesn't know how to read people's expressions. Just ignore him." Ning Qianqing walked beside Li Tianlan and asked softly, "We met with Yuetong yesterday. She was in a bad mood. Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said softly, "We're even now. We don't owe each other anything." "We don't owe each other anything?" Li Baidian also turned around and frowned. "What does that mean?" In his and Ning Qianqing's private speculation, Li Tianlan, who had the wind and thunder veins, should be one of the people the Wang family of Beihai was trying to win over. Perhaps Li Tianlan, whose realm was low now, was not important enough for the Wang family of Beihai to use their little princess to win him over. But if Wang Yuetong was interested, it would be a different story. If Wang Yuetong was really with Li Tianlan, who had the wind and thunder veins and could enter the invincible realm as long as she grew up, no one could say that she was wronged. But now Li Tianlan said that they didn't owe each other anything. What happened when they were alone yesterday? "Nothing." Li Tianlan said slowly, "I've paid back what I owed her. It's better to owe less to the Wang family of Beihai. It's best that we don't have much to do in the future." Ning Qianqing and Li Baidian looked at each other. No wonder Wang Yuetong looked a little strange yesterday. It seemed that the two had a falling out. It was totally inexplicable. "Are you serious?" Li Baidian looked at Li Tianlan and asked, "Wang Yuetong will be with us later. How will you face her then? Have you thought about it?" Li Tianlan didn't say anything and walked forward silently. In fact, if you think about it carefully, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be with Wang Yuetong. The Wang family of Beihai is a big tree. It has stood in Zhongzhou state for hundreds of years and has never fallen out of the ranks of the top wealthy families. If you can be with Wang Yuetong, the resources of the Wang family of Beihai will definitely be inclined to you. At that time, you will have a father-in-law who is the #1 expert in Zhongzhou state. That's amazing. Li Tianlan smiled with emotion. "It's true that you think so. But if Tianlan is really with Wang Yuetong, you can't expect Wang Yuetong to be completely on Tianlan's side. I'm afraid he will follow Wang Yuetong into the Wang family of Beihai." Ning Qianqing said suddenly. He had mixed feelings about the fact that Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong didn't owe each other anything. Of course, he felt regretful but also relieved. The Wang family of Beihai was a behemoth. Just thinking about it made people feel suffocated. A genius like Li Tianlan was indeed worthy of being roped in by them. But it wouldn't take much effort for such a wealthy family to swallow a genius whole. At least for now, it was not a bad thing for Li Tianlan to keep a distance from the Wang family of Beihai. They both have the wind and thunder veins. Li Baidian suddenly said after a moment of silence. Li Tianlan frowned slightly but didn't say anything. The three of them fell silent at the same time. If they continued to talk about Li Baidian, it would be a little heart-wrenching. Wang Tianzong of the Wang family of Beihai is the #1 expert in Zhongzhou state. What about Dong Qinghuangtu? How does he compare to Wang Tianzong? Li Tianlan took a drag on his cigarette and asked all of a sudden. Ning Qianqing and Li Baidian asked at the same time. Dong Qinghuangtu? Li Tianlan's tone was slightly heavier. When he said the name, there was a subtle feeling in his heart. It was the first time he heard the name from Qin Weibai's ears yesterday. But from Qin Weibai's tone, Li Tianlan felt more than just her terrifying combat strength that could be said to be invincible in the world. At that time, he could hear the pain and desolation in Qin Weibai's tone. That kind of emotion could not be concealed at all. Li Tianlan wouldn't be jealous of a dead person. Moreover, it was on the sofa last night that he took away Qin Weibai's most precious thing. But he didn't mind knowing more about the dead heavenly son. Therefore, when he mentioned the name Dongqing Huangtu, Li Tianlan deliberately looked at Ning Qianqing's expression. Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Praetorian Corps, was the current patriarch of the Dongqing clan, and Ning Qianqing was his confidant. Therefore, he should know more about the Dongqing clan, which occupied the Zhongyuan province, than anyone else. Dongqing Huangtu? Ning Qianqing murmured and looked at Li Beitin. Then he asked with a blank face, "Who is Dongqing Huangtu? I've never heard of him." Li Beitin said straightforwardly, "Is there such a person in the Dongqing clan? You don't know Dongqing Huangtu?" Li Tianlan looked surprised. "There's no such person in the Dongqing clan. I'm sure of it." Ning Qianqing shook his head. His tone was calm, and he didn't seem to be lying at all. "I don't know much about the Dongqing clan. But Tianlan, are you confused? Comparing Dongqing Huangtu to Wang Tianzong? Who is Wang Tianzong? The #1 expert in Zhongzhou State, known as the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State. The Dongqing clan is indeed an outstanding family, but in terms of combat strength, they don't have a single invincible realm expert. How can they compare with Wang Tianzong?" Li Beitin looked at Li Tianlan strangely. "What did you hear about this person? The name is quite domineering." Li Tianlan remained silent. He believed that Qin Weibai wouldn't lie to him, and there was no need for her to lie to him. But now, Ning Qianqing and Li Beitin both said that they had never heard of this person. That could only mean that everything about this person had been deliberately erased. Why was that? Now, even the treason of his father, Li Kuangtu, could be brought up by Gu Yunxia. Why was the matter of Dongqing Huangtu hidden so deeply? Even Ning Qianqing and Li Beitin, the core members of the younger generation, didn't know about it. Moreover, Dongqing Huangtu couldn't have been dead for too long. According to Qin Weibai's age, when he was at his peak, Li Beitin and Ning Qianqing should have been at least adults or close to adulthood. With their status, how could they not know anything about Dongqing Huangtu? "I heard someone mention it casually. I don't know much about it," Li Tianlan said with a smile. He wanted to show them Dongqing Huangtu's battle record, but everything about this person seemed to have become a taboo in Zhongzhou State. In that case, it was better not to say it. The three of them came to a 4-story building in the inner part of Huaxia University. Li Beitin pointed at the sign in front of him and said with a smile, "This is it." Li Tianlan looked up and glanced at the sign. He nodded and said nothing. The cyan building in front of them looked a little old. The walls were even covered with vines. The building was surrounded by gall sycamore trees. Against the backdrop of the trees and vines, the place looked very quiet. Even the signboard of the Leisure Sports Club hanging in front of the building looked a little distant. The interior of the building was a different world. The 4 floors of the building were well organized. Basketball, table tennis, and badminton were all on the first floor. The second floor was a small but exquisite bowling court. The third floor was for billiards, which was also the most popular place in the club. The fourth floor was for regular fitness equipment and yoga rooms. Li Tianlan and the two of them went all the way up to the third floor. Li Tianlan, who would instinctively observe his surroundings no matter where he went, found that the entire third floor was quiet. The dozens of billiards tables were empty. There was only a young man who looked a little handsome, and he was wiping the cue stick in boredom. "Business isn't good," Li Tianlan muttered to himself. "Business is very good, but we've booked the whole place." Ning Qianqing smiled and directly called out to the young man who was wiping the cue stick not far away. "Hold on, let me introduce you to a friend." The young man who was wiping the cue looked up and walked over with the cue stick in his hand. There was a rare purity in his smile. "Tianlan, this is my cousin, Zhang Holong. He's also the owner of this club." Ning Qianqing introduced him matter-of-factly. "Holong, this is my brother, Li Tianlan. We slept together in the Sky Academy." Li Tianlan took the initiative to extend his hand and smiled. Good. Zhang Holong held Li Tianlan's hand tightly and smiled naturally. Brother Li, don't stand on ceremony. Just do whatever you want in Huaxia University. I can definitely cover for you. Brother Baiyan said yesterday that he was coming to Huaxia University to get a bunch of female friends. I think he'll be here soon. There are many beautiful girls in Huaxia University. Brother Li, if there's one you like, just let me know and I'll be there at your beck and call. Little throat, don't pretend to be pretentious. You've learned bad things from your cousin. Call him over first. If I'm not satisfied, tonight's activities will be arranged by you. Li Baidian pulled Zhang Holong into his arms like he was a close friend and laughed. Little throat my ass. Zhang Holong, who was particularly unhappy with this nickname, muttered. He looked at the time and said, You guys play first. I'll make a call and set up this time. I think he'll be here soon. Do whatever you want. Li Baidian waved his hand indifferently. He picked up a cue nearby and prepared to start the game. Tianlan, come play around with me. I won't. Li Tianlan said carelessly, I'm not interested either. You play with Qianqing, I'll watch. I say, you really need to get in touch with things that young people should get in touch with. Watch carefully, you'll play the next round. Li Baidian laughed. Before he finished speaking, an obedient and quiet voice suddenly sounded. Hong, why did you call me? Everyone present turned their heads almost at the same time. In their line of sight, a girl who looked to be 17 or 18 years old walked up the stairs. The girl was about 1.65 meters tall. She was a little petite, but extremely beautiful and exquisite. She walked up to them with light steps. Under her long eyelashes, her beautiful eyes blinked. She was as cute as the most expensive doll. And the most impressive thing about her was her voice. It was a delicate child's voice, which sounded very pleasing to the ear. A girl like this simply found the perfect balance between a Lolita and a young girl. She exuded a very strange charm from head to toe. It's poetic, very poetic. Li Baidian glanced at the girl and kept muttering to himself. Li Tianlan also glanced at her. He didn't see anything poetic in her. He just thought that the girl was indeed beautiful. She might not be as beautiful as Qin Weibai or Wang Yuetong, but in Huaxia University, she deserved to be the campus belle. Different from the short skirts and black stockings outside, the girl's jeans, canvas shoes and cartoon sweater made her look very simple and refreshing. She stood there quietly, but she had a gentle and pleasant temperament. Was such a beautiful girl going to be harvested by Li Baidian? Li Tianlan shook his head. It was simply a waste of a good thing. Aha, Xinyan is here. I was just about to ask you when you would arrive. Zhang Holong, who was on the phone with his head down, looked up. An unnatural awkwardness flashed across his face. Li Baidian didn't notice it. He held the cue and was about to harvest the girl. Zhang Holong's body trembled slightly. He quickly stopped him and whispered with a smile, My dear brother, don't rush. We don't know what's going on with this girl. I'll talk to her first. Make a handsome pose. I'm here, so don't worry. Li Baidian coughed dryly and nodded, pretending to be calm. He bent down and made a pose with a face full of concentration. Xinyan, I have something to tell you. Let's talk somewhere else. Zhang Holong smiled awkwardly. He seemed to have a good relationship with the girl. He took her by the arm and walked to the other side. More than 10 meters away from them, Zhang Holong lowered his voice and said a few words. The girl named Xinyan turned her head and glanced at Li Baidian. She raised her eyebrows slightly. She looked like a very well-behaved girl, but as she raised her eyebrows, there was a sharp and awe-inspiring aura all over her body. But Li Baidian didn't notice it. He kept his pose with a face full of concentration. Zhang Holong said something again. So, the girl's delicate voice sounded. At the same time, she glanced at Li Baidian again. Li Baidian continued to focus. So, Zhang Holong's increasingly embarrassed voice sounded, and he immediately lowered it. Li Tianlan watched all this with interest. He always felt that things were not so simple. As a result, he saw the girl smile sweetly, like a blooming flower. Li Tianlan was slightly stunned. The next second, the girl grabbed the cue from Zhang Holong's hand and smashed it hard on Zhang Holong's head. she shouted, "Bastard Zhang Holong. I treat you as a friend. How dare you let your friend F***ck me? Do you have any humanity? Scum, bastard, despicable, nasty." Zhang Holong screamed. Without saying a word, he turned around and ran away. The girl began to chase after him with the cue. Her voice was so delicate that it could make one's imagination run wild. "Stuff. How dare you run? Bastard, if you dare to take one more step, I'll find a group of people to trample your D***ck. Do you believe it or not?" Li Tianlan and Ning Qianqing were dumbfounded. Li Beidian, who maintained a handsome posture with a focused face, shook his hand and poked the cue directly on the white ball. It was really a good shot. The white ball directly bounced off the table and flew out of the table. As if it had eyes, it smashed hard on Zhang Holong's head. Zhang Holong screamed again and fell to the ground on his back. Before he could struggle to get up, he was knocked down again by the girl behind him. Zhang Holong, who had a bitter expression on his face, simply stopped struggling. He just hugged his head and curled up his body, screaming, "Li Beidian! Han Xinyan! F***ck. P.S. Student Zhang Holong's cameo can be taken away. Brothers who need cameos can join the new book group, 6705485567. I'll remember every cameo and make an appearance at the right time." Chapter 51. The change of style was too fast. No one expected that the girl who looked quiet and well-behaved could be so wild and unrestrained in an instant. Not only Li Tianlan, but also Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian were shocked. They didn't come to harvest a girl, but to be harvested by a girl. Li Tianlan held a cigarette and sat motionless on the billiard table. For a moment, he couldn't react at all. Li Beidian kept the posture of hitting the ball and seemed to be completely dumbfounded. Han Xinyan, who looked well-behaved and quiet but was actually quite like a wild girlfriend, seemed to be still angry. Before Zhang Holong got up, she held the cue and was about to give him a few more hard blows. Zhang Holong, who had given up struggling, suddenly struggled like a pig being slaughtered when he saw this posture. He rolled and crawled out of the range of Han Xinyan's cudgel and cried out in exasperation, "Han Xinyan, are you serious?" "What do you mean serious?" Han Xinyan rushed forward with the cue. "How dare you F***ck my grandpa? You want your friend to F***ck me? How dare you?" "Well, Zhang Holong, I haven't seen you for a few days and you've become so awesome." "Why are you so awesome?" "Why are you so awesome? Do you know something? Why are you so awesome?" Chickens were flying and dogs were jumping. Chicken feathers were everywhere. There were only a few people on the third floor, which was a little quiet, but it suddenly became very lively. Zhang Holong was dodging in a panic, Han Xinyan was holding a cue, Li Beidian was confused, and Ning Qianqing and Li Tianlan were stunned. Such a scene was so beautiful that it could not be any more beautiful than that. The chase lasted for nearly 10 minutes. Nearly half of the area on the third floor was in a mess. Billiard balls of various colors rolled everywhere. Han Xinyan, who was waving the cue randomly, finally ran out of strength and threw the cue to the ground. She was still angry and said bitterly, "Bastard." Zhang Holong, who had been beaten but never fought back, took out a bottle of water from the bar and threw it to Han Xinyan with a bitter smile. He said helplessly, "I'm doing this for both of us. Xinyan, don't be angry. Let me tell you, these three are all first-class men. They are steady and reliable. Their characters and talents are top-notch. Don't you like Mount Shu very much? Beidian is from Shu Mountain. What are you dissatisfied with?" "I like the swords of Shushan, not the people of Shushan." "What do you mean, you bastard? Do you want your friend to F***ck me?" Han Xinyan widened her watery eyes and said angrily, "Are you asking for a beating? This is for your own good." Zhang Holong felt a headache coming on. "Look, Xinyan, as long as you find a boyfriend, my mom won't have to stare at you all the time and want you to be her daughter-in-law. Moreover, the person I found for you is absolutely reliable, absolutely reliable. Yo, you're pretty smart. How did you come up with such a good idea? I didn't realize it before. Do you have any good ideas? Tell me about it." As Han Xinyan spoke, She took out another cue and smiled sweetly. Look for him. At this critical moment, Zhang Holong really did not care about loyalty at all. He directly pointed at Li Beitan and said, "This is my cousin's brother and also my elder brother, Li Beitan, the great void sword master of Mount Shu. He said he was here to get a girl. To get a girlfriend, and the best one. I had no choice but to find you. It just so happens that you also like Mount Shu." Li Beitan shivered all over. Before he could scold Zhang Holong for being immoral, Han Xinyan had rushed over with the cue in her hand. "You want to get a girl, right? Great void sword master, right? Come on, I'm right here. You can get a girl." Li Baitian's reaction was exactly the same as Zhang Holong's. He covered his head and fled like a rat, howling, "That guy didn't say it was you. I was tricked. Damn, little throat dares to trick me. Wait and see." Li Tianlan subconsciously lit another cigarette. Looking at the farce in front of him, he said helplessly, "Beitan knows her? I haven't seen her, but I should have heard of her." Ning Qianqing smiled and sat down beside Li Tianlan. He watched the scene in front of him with relish. He raised his chin and nodded at Han Xinyan, whispering, "Her father is Han Donglu." "Who is Han Donglu?" Li Tianlan looked curious. He knew Zhang Holong, but he had never heard of Han Donglu and Han Xinyan. Most of the information Qin Weibai showed him yesterday was about the people inside the Sky Academy. Very few people were involved in the outside world. Zhang Holong or the Zhang family was highlighted by Qin Weibai because of his relationship with Ning Qianqing. The Zhang family of Huding. Nowadays, Huding was full of undercurrents and wealthy families, but the Zhang family was definitely one of the most powerful wealthy families in Huding and an important part of the Southeast Group. 5 years ago, the Southeast Group headed by the Wang family of Beihai suffered a major setback. Huding, which they had always regarded as their back garden, was lost and occupied by the Prince Group. The symbolic event was the early retirement of the Zhang family. The early retirement of the old man meant that the Southeast Group had directly lost the absolute initiative in Huding. Although the old man of the Zhang family had retired, his influence in Huding had not been eliminated. His descendants had also advanced further in their official careers because of the old man's retirement, and even had a huge room for improvement. Zhang Holong was the heir of the Zhang family in Huding. His father was a senior political official, and his mother was Ning Qianqing's aunt, Ning Xini, the vice president of Huding University, the dean of the business school, and a famous economist in Zhongzhou State. When Li Tianlan heard about the Zhang family yesterday, he didn't feel anything. But he didn't expect to meet the heir of the Zhang family only one day later. While sighing about fate, he listened to the conversation between Zhang Holong and Han Xinyan. The Zhang family seemed to want to matchmake Han Xinyan and Zhang Holong, but neither of them seemed to feel anything. That was why today's farce happened. Han Xinyan. Han Donglu. Li Tianlan thought about it carefully and confirmed that the names of these two people were not on yesterday's information. But from Ning Qianqing's tone and Han Xinyan's attitude, he knew that the Han family was probably not weaker than the Zhang family. Ning Qianqing glanced at Li Tianlan and said in a strange tone, "You should have heard of the Flourishing Age Fund, right? Han Donglu is the founder of the Flourishing Age Fund." "I haven't heard of it. Tell me in detail." Li Tianlan took a drag and said with a smile. The real wealthy families in Huding were still far away from him, but it seemed good to have a taste of them in advance. "I don't know much either." Ning Qianqing shook his head. Han Donglu can be said to be the biggest financial tycoon in Zhongzhou State. He has set off several international financial storms. The liquidity he controls is extremely terrifying. Conservatively speaking, Han Donglu can at least directly or indirectly influence the flow of trillions of funds. He is a real financial tycoon. The financial crisis of several countries in Southeast Asia a few years ago seemed to be led by the Flourishing Age Fund. Not only in Huding but also in the entire Zhongzhou State, Han Donglu has a strong influence. Indeed. Li Tianlan laughed softly. The cruelty of the currency war is even more painful than the real war. However, although Han Donglu is internationally notorious, he is a famous philanthropist in Zhongzhou State. He is kind and generous, and has close contacts with the important figures of the 6 groups in Zhongzhou State. But he doesn't take a clear side. He is considered a neutral wealthy family. Based on this alone, Han Donglu is unfathomable. Ning Qianqing's tone was filled with sincere admiration. It was not difficult to be neutral among the 6 groups in Zhongzhou State. It was also not difficult to be a wealthy family. But to be a neutral wealthy family was as difficult as ascending to heaven. The fact that Han Donglu could make it to this point without taking a clear side showed how terrifying the network of relationships under his financial empire was. Li Tianlan did not speak. He smoked thoughtfully. The unique sound of high-heeled shoes stepping on the steps rang from below and went up. Wang Yuedong's figure walked up to the 3rd floor and stopped at the stairway. The space on the 3rd floor was still lively. Han Xinyan seemed to have recovered her strength. She chased after Li Beiyin with a cue. Zhang Holong also seemed to be involved and fled like a rat with Li Beiyin. But Wang Yuetong turned a blind eye to everything in front of her. She just looked at Li Tianlan, who was sitting on the table and smoking, with a resentful and aggrieved look in her eyes. "Yuetong, here you are." Ning Qianqing took the initiative to greet her. There was a trace of undisguised amazement in his eyes. Today, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai seemed to have put on light makeup. Her originally beautiful little face looked even more attractive. She wore high-heeled shoes, black tights that could show off her figure, a white shirt, and long hair loose. She looked simple and elegant. She stood in front of the stairs and did not move. She just looked at Li Tianlan in silence, her eyes deep. This scene was really a little delicate and touching. Li Tianlan sighed softly. Ning Qianqing might not feel anything about Wang Yuedong's outfit, but how could he not? This outfit was almost a copy of Qin Weibai's yesterday. Wang Yuetong might not have Qin Weibai's calmness and magnanimity in her coldness, but her slightly mature and simple dress also added a little bit of youthful charm to her whole person. She was naturally beautiful, but he could not figure out why Wang Yuetong deliberately competed with Qin Weibai. Thinking of Yu Donglai's words, he suddenly had a headache. Did I really overreach myself? He really did not mean to play hard to get. In this situation, Li Tianlan, a virgin who had just lost his virginity last night, really had no way to deal with it. "I'll go and mediate." Ning Qianqing was not stupid. He naturally felt the subtle atmosphere between Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong. He coughed, turned around, and directly slipped away. Li Tianlan sat quietly where he was and smoked, without saying a word. Wang Yuetong looked at him for a while and bit her lip. But she still walked up to him and said softly, "Senior brother." Li Tianlan glanced at her and nodded, but did not know what to say. The relationship between the two seemed to be a little awkward. How's your injury?" Wang Yuetong said softly, "I brought a few kinds of medicine and some medicinal materials. They are in the car. I'll give them to you later." "No need." Li Tianlan shook his head and looked at Wang Yuetong. He deliberately said in a more polite tone, "My injury has healed, thank you." Wang Yuetong wrinkled her nose, and her eyes became more and more resentful. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she was trying hard to suppress her inner emotions. She said in a trembling voice, "I don't like you to say thank you." "Thank you." Li Tianlan was silent for a long time, but still said softly. Wang Yuetong did not speak anymore. She just looked at Li Tianlan with stubborn eyes. Li Tianlan took a big drag on the cigarette, and then lit another one after he finished it. It was hard to describe his feelings in this kind of resentful and stubborn eyes. He really wanted to tell Wang Yuetong his identity. He really wanted to tell her that it was the best result, that they owed each other nothing. He really wanted to tell her that he could not join the Wang family of Beihai. He really wanted to. But he could only think about it. Li Tianlan admitted that he could not bear the possible consequences if he said it. The cigarette was about to burn out. Li Tianlan's calm face also became cold. He suddenly got up, avoided Wang Yuetong, and said flatly, "Sorry, I need to go to the bathroom." He nodded and directly turned around. Behind him, Wang Yuetong grabbed his arm. Her hand was delicate and slender, but she pulled Li Tianlan's arm very hard. Her voice with a sobbing tone sounded behind him. It was soft and weak, but every word hurt his heart. Chapter 52. In fact, Li Tianlan didn't understand at all. It didn't matter whether he was playing hard to get or not. As the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Yuetong had never been treated like this in her 20 years of life. That was the most important thing. She really appreciated the man who seemed to be full of mysteries. The man who looked quiet but had the wind and thunder veins and the aura of a heavenly sun. The man who never seemed to be arrogant or rash and would stand in front of her when she was in danger and fight desperately. The man who seemed to do everything directly and indifferently, even if it was to cut off the relationship between them. Wang Yuetong didn't know what was going on. It seemed that she just met with second uncle. Why did everything become like this? Just because of Qin Weibai? Wang Yuetong didn't believe it. Because if it was Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan's relationship with second uncle would at most be a little stiff, but he wouldn't break up with her. She didn't understand why Li Tianlan treated her like this, and she didn't want to accept the statement that Li Tianlan fought desperately for her just to return her favor. After lunch at Yu's, Wang Yuetong was in a trance for most of the day yesterday. Her mind was full of Li Tianlan's determination and straightforwardness when he turned around, the coldness and alienation in his calm expression, the madness and overbearingness when he held the sword and raised the burning fire, and the tenderness and passion when he looked at Qin Weibai. All kinds of Li Tianlan repeatedly appeared in her mind, but as he turned around on the road, all of them seemed to have nothing to do with her. Grievance, sadness, confusion, resentment, unwillingness, and appreciation for Li Tianlan. In a short period of time, Wang Yuetong's heart had accumulated so many complex emotions that she could not even describe them. With such complex feelings gathered together, she even had the idea of snatching Li Tianlan away from Qin Weibai at all costs. Wang Yuetong knew that her state was not right. She was the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. She should be proud, reserved, and indifferent to the pursuit of a large number of young talents. But self-hypnosis over and over again couldn't change her inner thoughts at all. Especially after seeing Li Tianlan, her intuition kept telling her that she should go crazy for once. At least, she couldn't break up with this man so inexplicably. So at the moment when Li Tianlan was about to get up and leave with a distant face, Wang Yuetong took the initiative to reach out and grab his arm. Her voice was trembling so much that it sounded a little shrill. Her tone contained a trace of grievance and bitterness that made people's hearts tremble. The entire third floor seemed to have quietened down. Li Beidian and Zhang Holong stopped running. Han Xinyan gave up chasing him. Ning Qianqing, who was still a distance away from the battlefield, also stopped and turned around. In their eyes, Wang Yuetong was holding Li Tianlan's arm with both hands, looking like a pitiful little girl who had just quarreled with her boyfriend but didn't want him to leave. She looked so pitiful. Li Tianlan stood there stiffly, silent. They were dumbfounded. Everyone who saw this scene couldn't react in time. The pitiful girl in front of him was the little princess of the top aristocratic family in Zhongzhou State. What was going on? What the hell happened yesterday? Li Beidian looked at all this with dull eyes and murmured to himself. This was a King harvest of the highest quality. How many people had seen the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai like this? How the CK did she do it? Who is this person? Han Xinyan asked, holding the queue tightly. Of course, she wasn't asking about Wang Yuetong. Although the Han family in Huading was a new aristocratic family, the Flourishing Age Fund was extremely powerful. A few years ago, when the Flourishing Age Fund shorted the Japanese yen, it took the lead and all the major genes in the world followed. In just a few months, trillions of capital poured into the financial market of East Island State. The financial order of the entire East Island State was almost completely broken. While the Flourishing Age Fund made a lot of money, several countries in Southeast Asia were trembling with fear and even couldn't sleep at night. Behind this incident, in fact, was a cooperation between the Wang family of Beihai and the Flourishing Age Fund at the same time. At that time, Wang Tianzong, the #1 expert in Zhongzhou State, who was known as Sword Emperor, went to Huading to have a secret talk with Han Donglu. Han Xinyan, the only daughter of Han Donglu, was also there. Wang Yuetong and several other young talents of the Wang family of Beihai were also there. In just a few days, she might not be able to establish a deep personal relationship with Wang Yuetong, but it was not difficult to get familiar with her at all. Li Tianlan, my brother. Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian said in unison. He's also my brother. Zhang Holong followed and said weakly. Even your reaction is half a beat slower than others. You're so stupid. Han Xinyan wrinkled her delicate little nose and snorted. Zhang Holong smiled bitterly and continued to watch the show. Even though his grandfather had retired, he was still an important figure in the Southeast group. Therefore, compared with Han Xinyan, his relationship with Wang Yuetong was obviously much deeper. The two could even be said to be real friends, the kind that was related to each other as cousins. In the past, Zhang Holong had seen Wang Yuetong's cold, arrogant and reserved appearance. Now that he saw the pitiful little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, he only felt that it was an eye-opener. He even wanted to go to the merchandise area to get 2 bags of melon seeds to eat while watching the show. But when he thought of the consequences of being discovered by Wang Yuetong, he thought about it and finally did not move. But in fact, Wang Yuetong did not look at him at all. At this moment, in the vast space on the 3rd floor, Wang Yuetong only had eyes for Li Tianlan. Before Li Tianlan's answer and explanation, she clenched her fists again and called out aggrievedly, "Senior brother." Li Tianlan did not move. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and let go of her hand. She walked quickly to Li Tianlan and said, "Look at me." Li Tianlan looked at her quietly. In his sight, there was indeed a flawless and delicate face. Her eyes were crystal clear, and Li Tianlan could still see his own shadow in her eyes. It was so clear, but it seemed so far away. Li Tianlan suddenly smiled and whispered, "I have a girlfriend. You saw her yesterday, right?" "I'm not going to be your girlfriend." Wang Yuetong bit her lip and said, "Senior brother, can't we even be good friends? Why are you doing this to me? What did I do wrong?" Not to be a girlfriend, but to be a good friend. This sentence was really an invincible position. Li Tianlan did not know Wang Yuetong's psychological state. At this moment, perhaps even Wang Yuetong herself did not know what she was thinking, let alone Li Tianlan, who did not know Wang Yuetong's psychological state. They had not been together for a long time, but they had gone through life and death together. It was not an exaggeration to repay him for saving her life. When a woman fell in love with a man, even if it was not love at first sight, a moment of affection was enough to be unforgettable. Yesterday, in the sky full of fire and broken ice, Wang Yuetong did have an affection, but she was not sure what it meant. Good friends. When such a position came out of her mouth, she suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. Good friends. There were too many possibilities in such a position. She did not want to and did not intend to think about the future. Now she just wanted to know what was happening in front of her. "You're right," Li Tianlan said in a calm tone. "It's my fault. I'm sorry, I don't want to hear sorry." Wang Yuetong interrupted Li Tianlan in a domineering way. It seemed that she did not want Li Tianlan to go on, so she said quickly, "Senior brother, I've prepared some medicine and herbs for you in the car. I'll go get them now." While speaking, she trotted all the way downstairs. Her swaying figure, accompanied by the crisp sound of high-heeled shoes, was getting farther and farther away. When her figure completely disappeared, Li Tianlan breathed a long sigh of relief and turned to look at the people who were watching the show. Li Beidian and the others suddenly came to their senses. Han Xinyan's acting was clumsy. She picked up the cue and was about to continue the drama of chasing and killing to prove her innocence. Zhang Holong and Li Beidian also opened their mouths, as if they were going to continue screaming. Li Tianlan said calmly before they could scream, "I'll go downstairs." His figure also quickly went downstairs, chasing after Wang Yuetong. Li Beidian and the others looked at each other. After a little hesitation, Zhang Holong did not give up gossiping, so he tentatively said, "Shall we go down and have a look?" "Look, aren't you afraid that Wang Yuetong will kill you if she finds out? Haven't you seen enough just now? Come on, get 2 bags of melon seeds. Let's talk while eating and reminisce." Han Xinyan casually slapped Zhang Holong on the head and said. She looked so well behaved, but her every move was full of manliness. Not to mention how Zhang Holong, the direct victim, felt. Xinyan's domineering attitude made Li Baidian, who had been beaten for a long time, and Ning Chenqing, who had watched 2 good dramas in a row, the first to be unable to stand it. "I'll go with you." The corner of Li Baidian's mouth twitched. He put his arm around Zhang Holong's neck, lowered his voice, and gnashed his teeth. "Little throat, is this the pink and well-behaved campus belle you introduced to me? F*CKU. If I don't rip you off tonight, believe it or not, my surname is not Li." Behind them, Han Xinyan watched Li Baidian and Zhang Holong walk away with their arms around each other's shoulders. She narrowed her watery eyes and muttered to herself, "Nothing good can happen when these two get together. Don't tell me they still want to F*CK me?" She glanced at Ning Chenqing and suddenly said, "Do you think they still haven't given up? Especially that Li Baidian. He's shifty-eyed and wretched." Ning Chenqing's body trembled slightly. Without hesitation he said, "No, you think too much." Wang Yuedong's car was parked at the entrance of the club. In order to stop Li Tianlan from talking, she hurried downstairs and went directly to the side of the car. From the car, she took out a large rectangular box with a thickness of more than 10 centimeters and a length of about half a meter. Wang Yuetong weighed the box and nodded with satisfaction. But before a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, her expression suddenly froze. Li Tianlan, who had followed her downstairs, stood in front of her and looked at her quietly. There was no emotion in his eyes. Wang Yuedong's heart sank slightly. She lowered her head and took a few steps forward. She held the box and was about to give it to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan did not take it. He just said softly, "My injury has healed. You can't not see it, can you?" Wang Yuetong just insisted on holding the box and handing it to Li Tianlan. It could be said that this was the first time in her life that she had given a gift to a man. She felt extremely embarrassed, and Li Tianlan's reaction made her feel even more aggrieved. She cupped the box in her hand toward Li Tianlan. Her fingers became a little pale because she used too much force. She lowered her head even more and whispered, "Can't we even be good friends? I just don't need it anymore." Li Tianlan shook his head and did not know what to say. "You do need it. There are many healing medicines and things that can temporarily improve your combat effectiveness. You can use them all. Bring them back to the Sky Academy and they can help you build up enough credits faster." Wang Yuetong looked up at Li Tianlan and said with the box in her arms, "This is the limit of what I can collect. But in 2 days my father and my brother will also come to Huding. At that time, I will ask them for some more and give them to you, okay?" "Your father and your brother are coming to Huding?" Li Tianlan was a little surprised. One was the #1 expert in Zhongzhou State, the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State. The other was the young heavenly son in everyone's eyes. Wang Tianzong. Wang Shensha. At the thought of these two people, Li Tianlan had mixed feelings. "My brother is about to break through the fire-flaming realm and enter the thunder-shocking realm. My father said that he would take him to the desert in Beijiang and then come to Huding," Wang Yuetong said honestly. She hesitated a little and whispered, "And my father wants to see you." Li Tianlan only felt that his hair all over his body was standing on end. "Wang Tianzong wants to see me? What the hell?" This was almost the last thing he wanted to see now. He took a deep breath and said calmly, "His Highness Sword Emperor is busy every day. It's a waste of time to see me. I'm just a nobody. It's better not to see me." He nodded to Wang Yuetong. He said politely, "Thank you for your things, but I really don't need them now. Put them away." He turned around and left. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and went straight to the door of the club. "Li Tianlan." Wang Yuedong's almost screaming voice sounded behind him. The sun was shining brightly. Under the mottled shadows of the trees, the girl's voice was helpless and sad. Her emotions seemed to be completely out of control, and her face was covered with tears. She held the box in one hand and wiped her tears with the other. She sobbed softly and said, "Do I make you hate me so much? Why do you want to be even with me? I just want you to owe me. You saved me yesterday, but it doesn't count. If you treat me like this, I'd rather die. It doesn't count. Do you hear me? You still owe me." I'll make you owe me for the rest of your life. Li Tianlan stopped walking up the steps. He didn't look back but said in a cold tone, "Then I owe you." Chapter 53. Because of the awkward relationship between Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong, they could not enjoy themselves to the fullest in the afternoon. Li Beidian himself had little interest in billiards. When he came to Huaxia University, he had been tricked into coming here to collect a girl's heart. In the end, the quality of the girl's heart was top-notch. But forget about being picked, he was chased around by Han Xinyan with a cue in her hand. He couldn't even tell which way was north or south. After learning about Han Xinyan's identity, Li Beidian completely gave up on the idea of harvesting her. In his own words, it was better to find a girl with a simple background to pick up a girl's girlfriend. This was especially true when it came to dating. Otherwise, a small matter between a man and a woman might turn into a collision between two forces. Blood would flow like a river, and that would be a sin. With his thoughts gone, Li Beidian was not in high spirits. He spent the whole afternoon just killing time. Ning Qianqing spent most of his time paying attention to Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong. Obviously, he did not know whether it would be good or bad for them to be in such a state. In this respect, Li Beidian's criteria for choosing a partner were very reasonable. Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong could not be friends, and in the end, it would become a sin. The so-called ill-fated relationship was nothing more than this. Ning Qianqing knew that his worries were unnecessary, but he could not help but worry. Han Xinyan had long been tired of playing in the shabby place, and there was nothing new about it. In addition, because of the first impression, she always felt that Li Beidian was a little shifty-eyed and extremely wretched. She did not pick up the cue to vent her anger again, purely for the sake of the two big brands of Mount Shu and Sky Academy. Zhang Holong was on tenterhooks. He really wanted to watch the show, but he was also afraid that Wang Yuetong would come after him. In his mind, the Wang family of Beihai was nothing to be afraid of. After all, they were all on the same side. However, Wang Yuetong's reputation as the siren was definitely not an undeserved one. If she really had a grudge against him, he, the eldest young Master Zhang, would definitely be in serious trouble in the future. So for the whole afternoon, Zhang Holong's eyes kept flickering, hiding and sneaking glances at Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong from time to time, feeling that it was damn exciting. Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan, on the other hand, seemed to have calmed down. They went downstairs one after another, both empty-handed. But when they came back, they ignored each other as if they didn't know each other. Instead, they talked and laughed with others. This seemingly normal behavior became the most abnormal factor in this small group. In addition, everyone had their own thoughts. After the whole afternoon, everyone was muddle-headed. Dinner was settled at the club. As the host, Zhang Holong said that he had already booked a private room at the Black Club and invited everyone to have some fun. The Black Club might not be as high-end as the garden party, but the threshold was not low either. It was just that the main customers were some young people and the atmosphere was good. It was said that the young men and women in the club were very open. It was called the Black Club. Zhang Holong didn't know whether it was black or not, but the word, sex, was the real essence of the club. Li Beidian said that he would not go there. He just said that any bar would be good. He liked women, but in some ways he was like Ning Qianqing. He didn't like to get in touch with all kinds of complicated circles. His motto was that a girl and a sword were indispensable, and a girl came before a sword. But when it came to harvesting a girl, he was extremely unwilling to get involved with some other messy forces. Moreover, there were many so-called daughters of famous families who kept their chastity as pure as Wang Yuetong, but there were also many who had messy private lives. Li Beidian was harvesting a girl, so the fairer the better. If he met a girl who was reserved on the surface and acted like a girl who was inlaid with gold and jade on the surface, but turned out to be a skilled veteran in bed, it would be really difficult to decide whether to have sex with her or not. And whether to have sex with her or not, it would be very unappetizing. Li Beidian preferred to go to places that were of a higher class but were open to the public. There were many talented and naive young girls in Shushan. Li Beidian rarely ate the grass near his nest, but after so many years, he was tired of looking at them. Instead, it was those young and mature women who had received higher education who were intellectual and refined that were the most lethal to him. Those entertainment places that were relatively clean and did not have a foul atmosphere were the best places to harvest in his eyes. Zhang Holong looked at their reactions. Ning Qianqing and Han Xinyan didn't care about this kind of place. Wang Yuetong was still in a cold war with Li Tianlun. Li Beitian, the only one who expressed his opinion, was directly regarded by Zhang Holong as a collective opinion. He nodded and said with a smile, "Then let's go to Hengshan Road. We don't need to set a location. Shall we set off now?" "Then let's go." Li Beitian stood up and was in high spirits. Li Tianlun hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Beitian, who was looking at everyone's reaction, suddenly froze and asked in confusion, "Tianlun, do you have other arrangements?" "No, I'm free today," Li Tianlun said with a smile. He really planned to go home. How could he sit still when he thought that there was a beautiful woman waiting for him at home? Maybe when he went back, he could have a deep experience of Qin Weibai in a short skirt and black stockings. How could he sit still? Hengshan Road and Henghu Road were all floating clouds in his eyes. However, this was their first group action after the Sky Academy's holiday. No matter how anxious he was, it was not appropriate for him to leave now. It was good to follow the good advice and have some fun. Wang Yuetong, who deliberately sat next to Li Tianlun during the meal but didn't talk to him, stood up in silence and followed Li Tianlun downstairs. There were 6 people in the small group, but they drove 3 cars. Han Xinyan's car was a bright red sports car with a very flamboyant shape. Li Tianlun didn't know what brand it was, but he knew it was not cheap just by looking at the shape. First Miss Han's obedience and gentleness were indeed just a facade. Perhaps savagery and queen style were hidden in her bones. She opened the door and sat in the car. She glanced at them and directly ordered, "Holong, get in my car and chat with me." "I'm driving." Zhang Holong pointed to the silver Audi in front of him, a little reluctant. Han Xinyan didn't say anything and just sat in the car with a blank expression. Zhang Holong didn't last more than 2 seconds before he decisively admitted defeat. He handed the key to Ning Qianqing and sat in the sports car obediently. Feeling the low seat of the sports car, he felt a pain in the balls. "Tut-tut, you put an A7 on a good RS7. What do you mean? Little throat, you're just like your cousin. You're very pretentious." Li Beitian looked at the Audi in front of him and sighed. "It's none of my business. This guy deliberately put an A7 on it to make people disgusted. He said he liked the thrill of instantly killing a Lamborghini by stepping on the accelerator." Ning Qianqing threw the car key and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Get in the car." "I'll take your car." Li Tianlun opened his mouth. As soon as he took a step forward, his palm was directly held by a tender and warm little hand. He turned his head slightly. Wang Yuetong stood beside him without saying a word. She held his hand with one hand and lowered her head without saying a word. But the meaning she wanted to express was very obvious. That was no way. Li Tianlun struggled a little, but Wang Yuetong's little hand became tighter and tighter. She wouldn't let go. Li Tianlun smiled bitterly and helplessly looked at the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai in front of him, who lowered her head and held his hand without saying a word or letting him go. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. To be honest, at this moment, he was really a little bit moved by Wang Yuetong's posture. In this situation, if he insisted on pulling his hand out, it would really be a little pretentious and mean. He subconsciously shook his head and whispered, "Let's go. I'll take your car." Wang Yuetong said, and did not let go of his hand. She dragged him to her blue sports car. Li Tianlun let Wang Yuetong pull him away, but his heart became more and more helpless. He thought of what Wang Yuetong had told him in the afternoon. Wang Tianzong, the dignified #1 expert in Zhongzhou State and the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State who controlled the human emperor, actually wanted to see him. He really didn't want to have anything to do with the Wang family of Beihai. But now he suddenly felt that he was more and more involved with Wang Yuetong. The 3 cars, led by Han Xinyan's red sports car, drove out of the campus and went straight to Hengshan Road under the envious and jealous eyes of many students of Huaxia University. Do you want to listen to music? Inside the car, Wang Yuetong asked in a very natural tone. No need. Li Tianlan shook his head. Since they were already in the car, if he pretended to be cold and kept silent, he would look down on himself, not to mention that he was deliberately looking for embarrassment. Perhaps it was always so easy for a woman to break through a man's defense. On such an occasion, he really could not do something like ignoring Wang Yuetong. Wang Yuetong drove the car and nodded. She took out a pack of cigarettes from the storage box in the car and handed it to Li Tianlan. She said softly, "Have a try. I have a pack in the trunk. I guess you won't want it, will you?" Li Tianlan glanced at the lavender wooden box and the word, "Hero," engraved on it. Sure enough, they were exactly the same as the cigarettes Qin Weibai gave him. He hesitated for a moment and took it. But he put it aside and said softly, "I don't want to smoke for now." Wang Yuetong replied with a and looked at the road ahead with a calm expression. Li Tianlan didn't speak anymore. He forced himself to be clear-headed and began to think about Wang Yuetong's words. Wang Tianzong. Should he see him or not? If he didn't see him, how could he push him? If he saw him, what would be the result? What was the demeanor of the #1 expert in Zhongzhou State? It would be a pity if he couldn't see it with his own eyes, wouldn't it? Li Tianlan was lost in thought when Wang Yuetong's soft voice suddenly sounded. "Senior brother?" Li Tianlan responded subconsciously. "When will you pay me back what you owe me?" Wang Yuetong was still soft, as if she was having a casual chat. "Will it be over?" "I don't owe you anything. At least I think so." Li Tianlan said helplessly. "Why don't you owe me? Just because you saved me yesterday? I don't want you to save me. Do you think I'll be happy if you save me and treat me like this? Bastard. I cried all day yesterday. Why don't you owe me anything? My life is worthless. If you want it, just take it. You owe me." Wang Yuetong snorted coldly and raised her chin proudly. Li Tianlan really had no way to deal with the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai who was so arrogant, cute, and shameless. He could steel his heart and turn a blind eye to her anger and grievances. But there was really no way to deal with shameless things. He took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. He took a deep breath. In the faint smoke, he said with a bitter smile, "You're pestering me endlessly." "Yes, I am. What can you do? Do you hate me?" Li Tianlan twitched the corner of his mouth. He didn't say anything and just took a big puff. "I'll snatch it sooner or later." Wang Yuetong suddenly said something without rhyme or reason. "Snatch what?" Li Tianlan's body trembled. "It's none of your business," Wang Yuetong said fiercely and arrogantly. Li Tianlan was so annoyed. He smoked and made up his mind not to talk anymore. The distance from Huading University to Hengshan Road was neither too far nor too short. With the current traffic situation in the city, the 3 cars finally approached the destination about an hour later. Victory Bar, which translated meant Victory Bar. The layout of the bar was 2 floors above ground and 1 below ground. It was not big, but it looked avant-garde and trendy. 6 tall girls in red cheongsams with high slits stood in front of the door to welcome the guests. The cheongsams were low-cut. Every time a guest entered the bar, they would slightly bow and say, "Welcome." Their breasts would be half hidden, but it was more attractive. There was still a large space in the parking lot in front of the bar. As soon as Wang Yuetong parked the car, Li Tianlan got out of the car and hurried to the Audi RS7 driven by Li Beiyin. During the 1-hour journey, he really couldn't bear Wang Yuetong's meaningful murmurs. The siren of the Wang family of Beihai was indeed worthy of her reputation. Li Tianlan thought he was strong-willed and indestructible. But after an hour, he still sweated several times. When his feet touched the ground, he subconsciously breathed a long sigh of relief. In the car, Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan's back as if she had found his weakness. Her beautiful mouth quietly curled up into an enchanting and proud smile. When Li Tianlan walked to the side of the Audi, Li Beiyin had already got out of the car. Standing in front of the door, he looked at the empty parking lot and frowned slightly. Zhang Holong, who also walked over, looked at Li Beitin's expression and seemed to know what he was thinking. He whispered with a smile, "Brother Beitin, this is one of the best bars in Huading. But it's not the right time. In half an hour at most, the parking lot here will be full. It's hard to find an empty space to park nearby. The pace here is more relaxed and more suitable for relaxation. When we have enough fun here, we'll go to Mason's. It's not far from here. In your words, Brother Baton, as long as you're willing to wave your hand on Hengshan Road, there's no girl that can't be harvested. I come here often and it's my territory. Since I brought you here, I'll never let you down. Li Baton laughed and said, then why are you still talking nonsense? Let's go and get more girls. Pink and tender ones. Tonight, I'll give them to your brother Tung. Li Baton. Go on if you want to die. Wang Yuetong, who was following Li Tianlan, narrowed her beautiful eyes and flashed with killing intent. Li Baton paused and said with a straight face, I'm wrong. I meant for your brother Qianxing to have a taste. A group of people walked into the bar laughing. Intentionally or unintentionally, Li Baton and Ning Qianxing paused and fell behind Li Tianlan. Zhang Holong, who didn't communicate much with Li Tianlan in the afternoon, was stunned. He subconsciously looked at Han Xinyan and also stopped. Only Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with a clear conscience. She put her small hand in Li Tianlan's and walked beside him. Zhang Holong's pupils dilated slightly and he subconsciously glanced at Ning Qianxing. But he saw his cousin stare at him without batting an eyelid, and then followed them in. Passing through a corridor carved with various gorgeous paintings, they walked directly into the hall. The hall was large, but the dance floor and stage were exquisite. When it was full of people, the ambiguous atmosphere on the dance floor could only be experienced by the people involved. Li Tianlan was a country bumpkin, so he naturally couldn't see the style of the equipment in the bar. He only felt that the sound system was very textured, making people feel as if they were there and listening to it was very comfortable. Zhang Holong was completely like a fish in water on such an occasion. He pointed to a direction with a smile and said, Himan, you go and sit down first. Table number 1 is specially reserved for me. I'll find some girls to warm up the place. What kind of girls do you like? Wang Yuetong glanced at Li Tianlan with her big eyes. Li Tianlan wisely kept silent and pretended not to hear her. Of course, the more the better. Hurry up, go and come back soon. Ning Qianxing looked at his cousin's success and scolded him with a smile. Zhang Holong patted his chest, turned around and disappeared. Let's go. Li Tianlan took Wang Yuetong's hand, or rather, he was taken by Wang Yuetong. They walked directly to table number 1. At the same time, table number 1, which was originally reserved for eldest young Master Zhang, also saw Li Tianlan and the others. It's really a small world for enemies. At table number 1, a petite and extremely beautiful woman sat in the center. She looked at Li Tianlan, who was walking toward her. She gently raised her red lips and said in a cold tone. This was a woman with a figure that was hot enough to make any man's imagination run wild. Although she was not tall, she looked extremely well-proportioned and very tasteful. Her beauty was ice-cold, but her temperament was extremely wild and unbridled. She was like a wild horse that was not easy to tame. However, it was precisely because of the difficulty of conquering her that most people wanted to try the feeling of riding on this wild horse. I was just about to look for them, and they came to me. How about we do it tonight? Beside the petite and extremely beautiful woman, a young man who was like a giant opened his mouth. He looked fierce and his voice was deep, with a very shocking evil spirit and murderous intent. The petite woman slightly narrowed her eyes. Before she could speak, a gentle and smiling voice suddenly sounded. Yulan, what do you mean by a small world for enemies? Have you met an enemy? A tall young man walked over from the bathroom and said with a smile. He looked at the petite woman with undisguised passion and desire in his eyes. The young man was about 30 years old. He was wearing a white Armani suit that was very flashy, and the watch on his wrist was also shining brightly. His appearance was not outstanding, but when paired with his casual smile, his attractiveness suddenly skyrocketed. Especially his attire. Armani was not a big deal, but the famous watch on his wrist, as long as one knew it, was enough to buy a Ferrari or Lamborghini in Zhengzhou State. As long as he knew the value of the watch, it was clear. The petite woman and the young man looked at each other, and a trace of extremely obscure contempt flashed in their calm and cold eyes. She slightly raised her chin and looked at Li Tianlan, who was getting closer and closer. She lightly said, "Young Master Zhong, you must know them." The young man slightly raised his eyebrows and turned his head subconsciously. He immediately saw Li Tianlan and the others. He slightly frowned. He did not know Li Tianlan. He was a complete stranger. But when he saw the girl in the young man's hand, young Master Zhong's pupils suddenly contracted violently. Wang Yuetong. It turned out to be Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. Young Master Zhong took a deep breath and set his eyes on Li Tianlan again. Who on earth is this guy who is holding the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai in broad daylight? He looked behind him. Ning Qianqing and Han Xinyan. Young Master Zhong was no stranger to them at all. But the eyesore bamboo pole was really an eyesore. Not only did it make him completely unfamiliar, but it also made him laugh in such a mean way. Damn it. Young Master Zhong subconsciously gritted his teeth and smiled, but his eyes became gloomy. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. He muttered to himself, nodded to his companions at the table, and said flatly, "I met some acquaintances. I'm going to say hello." The petite woman nodded. Looking at young Master Zhong's back, she slightly raised the corner of her mouth. It feels good to use this idiot as a knife. It was just that he didn't know if he could kill people with it. Chapter 54. People who were born with keen intuition were very sensitive to the hostility around them, and a keen intuition was one of the important factors to become an expert. Except for Zhang Holong and Han Xinyan, Li Tianlan's group of 6 were all rising talents in martial arts. Therefore, when young Master Zhong's gloomy and vicious eyes swept over them, Li Tianlan and the others looked up almost at the same time and met young Master Zhong's eyes. They were about 10 meters away from each other. The light in the bar was a little dim, so Li Tianlan couldn't see young Master Zhong's expression clearly. But young Master Zhong's eyes were fixed on him with undisguised coldness and hatred. To be exact, young Master Zhong's eyes should be on Wang Yuetong. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Wang Yuetong beside him and asked slowly, "Who is that?" Wang Yuetong apparently also noticed young Master Zhong walking toward her. She frowned slightly and subconsciously held Li Tianlan's hand tightly. She said with disgust, "Just a playboy. His family is full of villains. So annoying." "Ha, little princess, what a coincidence." Young Master Zhong walked over with a smile on his face, but his small eyes were cold and ruthless, as if there were knives hidden in them. "I've long heard that little princess has come to Huading. I've been looking for a chance to entertain you and do my best as a host. Unfortunately, I've never had the chance. I didn't expect to meet you here today. It's fate. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and kept his composure. Anyone who wasn't a fool could basically tell how sarcastic his words were. Especially when he said, "friendship as a host," young Master Zhong emphasized each word as if he was mocking something. "Zhong." Li Tianlan's eyebrows moved. No matter how little he knew about the situation in Zhongzhou State, he still knew that the top leader of Huading was surnamed Zhong. If the young man in front of him really had that kind of relationship, then it was reasonable for him to say, "friendship as a host." "You're welcome, young Master Zhong." Wang Yuetong was still holding Li Tianlan's hand. When she looked calm without acting cute or smiling, she looked reserved and proud, so proud that she seemed to look down on everyone. Yuetong was treated well yesterday and almost lost her life. The Wang family of Beihai is a small family and we haven't found out who the other party is. Young Master Zhong, as the host, I wonder if you can provide us with some clues? If the investigation leads to the Zhong family, it won't be good if there is a misunderstanding. You almost lost your life? Young Master Zhong was a little surprised. Then he laughed heartily and said, "Isn't it just a little bit more? That was a pity. Regarding this matter, our family can't provide any clues. If we didn't do it, what can we provide? Stingy, too stingy. If it were us, we wouldn't be any worse. We would definitely satisfy you, Yue Tong." His smile was bright, but his eyes involuntarily moved up and down Wang Yuetong's body. It was not a look of passion or amazement, but a kind of extremely cruel and even sadistic insidiousness. Wang Yuetong smiled and said in a soft voice, "That's a little interesting. Young Master Zhong, there are all kinds of people in the Wang family of Beihai, but none of them are afraid of trouble. I really want to see what kind of tricks you have in your hospitality. No matter whether I'm satisfied or not, the Wang family of Beihai will definitely satisfy the Zhong family and your whole family afterward. I'm afraid it won't be our turn." Young Master Zhong stood in the middle of the road and had no intention of giving way. He narrowed his eyes slightly and glanced at Li Tianlan. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "I'm afraid this brother can satisfy Yuetong, right?" He took the initiative to reach out to Li Tianlan and said, "Brother, you look unfamiliar. Or you, let me introduce myself. I'm Zhong Xiaofeng, a loafer in the Municipal Supervision Department. I'm usually an idler. I'm Li Tianlan." Li Tianlan gave him face and reached out to shake hands with him. His tone was indifferent, neither hostile nor warm. "A freshman of the Sky Academy." Oh. Zhong Xiaofeng uttered a few "oh"s and exclaimed, "If you can enter the Sky Academy, you must be an elite of Zhongzhou State. Amazing. But I'm more envious of your luck with women, brother. You must be very happy to have such a beautiful girlfriend like Yuetong, right? This figure, this temperament, this appearance, tut-tut, it makes me drool. I don't know if I have a chance to taste it in this life." Unscrupulous. In Huading, only the Zhong family standing at the commanding heights of Huading dared to speak rudely to the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Yuetong's little face was slightly flushed and her eyes were cold. She held Li Tianlan's hand tighter and tighter, but she didn't do anything. If it was in normal times, Wang Yuetong would not hesitate to teach Zhong Xiaofeng a hard lesson just because of his words. Of course, she couldn't kill him. But as long as he was alive, she could do whatever she wanted. Even if the sky collapsed, the Wang family of Beihai would hold it up for her. But now it was different. In Huading, the treatment of the Zhong family was even more different. A few months ago, her second uncle Wang Xiaoyao directly beat a core figure of the Zhong family into a vegetative state because of jealousy. During these months, the Zhong family of Huading seemed to be peaceful, but the towering figure of the Zhong family had always been active in the dark. He had a very high position in the prince group, and the whole prince group was ready to make trouble. In dealing with the Zhong family, the Wang family of Beihai was now under pressure. There were still a lot of things about her second uncle that had not been cleaned up. At this time, in the face of the Zhong family's provocation, she had to bear it no matter what. Her second uncle beat an important figure of the Zhong family into a vegetative state not long ago. Now if she crippled Zhong Xiaofeng, then the Wang family of Beihai and even the whole Southeast group would probably incur public anger. At that time, all the major groups would probably think that the Wang family of Beihai wanted to take back Huading by simple and rough means. Once public anger was aroused, no matter how strong the Wang family of Beihai was, it would have to compromise in the face of pressure. Zhong Xiaofeng must have known what the current situation was, so he provoked her unscrupulously. He was completely sure that she didn't dare to do anything to him. Wang Yuetong took a deep breath. Her plump chest rose and fell with her breath. Seeing this scene, Zhong Xiaofeng whistled exaggeratedly and praised sincerely, "What a beautiful scene. Brother, your girl is really good. Name your price. How much can I have a taste? I've been longing for the taste of a little princess for a long time." This time, not only Wang Yuetong, but also Han Xinyan, a woman, showed a look of anger and disgust. The Han family was originally a neutral wealthy family, but Zhong Xiaofeng's provocation was too much. Even she couldn't stand it anymore. Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing stood behind Li Tianlan, one on the left and the other on the right, waiting for him to make a statement with no expression on their faces. "Do you want to have a taste?" Li Tianlan was still holding Zhong Xiaofeng's hand and asked with a gentle smile. "What? You don't want to?" Zhong Xiaofeng's eyes suddenly became sharp and even a little ferocious. Li Tianlan seemed to be in a dilemma. After hesitating for a while, he continued with a smile, It's Yue Tong who doesn't want to, so I'm afraid you can't have a taste. The contempt in Zhong Xiaofeng's eyes flashed away, and then he laughed and said, So you have no objection? It's good that you have no objection. Even if Yue Tong is not willing now, I can solve my doubts from you, brother. It's said that the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai is as pure as ice and as clean as jade. Tut, brother, tell me, how does the little princess behave in bed? Is she coquettish? Is she tight? I'm not interested if she's too loose. By now, Li Tianlan could almost clearly smell the conspiracy behind this provocation. He didn't know what it meant, but the undercurrent of the situation in Zhongzhou State was surging more and more clearly in front of him. Gu Yunxia's speech at the start of term ceremony, Zhuang Huayang's invitation, Wang Yuedong's attack, Zhong Xiaofeng's initiative and even deliberate provocation, and Wang Yuedong's current forbearance. Everything seemed to be independent, but there seemed to be some subtle implications. It seemed that many invisible hands, intentionally or unintentionally, were reaching into Huading. The storm was gathering. Huading had gradually become the center of the vortex. There were already so many clues around him, so how much more shocking would there be in the places that he couldn't see? Li Tianlan didn't know what would happen in the future, but at least he was sure that in the face of Zhong Xiaofeng's provocation, he didn't have to stand up for Wang Yuetong. In the current situation, he didn't need to show off. The Wang family of Beihai would take care of it. Therefore, in the face of Zhong Xiaofeng's extremely insulting question, he just shook his head, as if he really didn't have any temper. He laughed and said, I don't know. Wang Yuetong's eyes dimmed slightly. Behind him, Han Xinyan's eyes also flashed a trace of disappointment. Brother, it seems that you want to leave me a sense of mystery. I know what you're thinking. After I have a taste of Yue Tong, we can have a good talk. I'll unlock many new positions for you, by the way. You're so sensible, I think you'll say thank you to me, right? Zhong Xiaofeng laughed. Not only did his words become more and more outrageous, but he even stretched out his hand and gently patted Li Tianlan's face. Li Tianlan looked calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Zhong Xiaofeng looked at Li Tianlan and didn't speak. He suddenly lost interest in such a cowardly Li Tianlan and didn't want to tease these freshmen of the Sky Academy too much. His goal had always been firmly locked on the Wang family of Beihai. How unattainable was the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai? But now, because of a cousin, the entire Wang family of Beihai had to endure in Huading. Before the storm ended, who knew if this kind of tolerance would be temporary or permanent? Zhong Xiaofeng was fearless. No matter now or in the future, with his identity, as long as the prince group didn't lose power, the Wang family of Beihai couldn't do anything to him. Even if he couldn't taste Wang Yuetong tonight, he could enjoy talking in front of the goddess. It was also good. Yuetong, how about a drink with your brother Zhong alone? The wine here is ordinary. If you think it's not drinkable, I have something good here. It's been stored for several days. It's definitely strong and tasty enough. Do you want to try it? Zhong Xiaofeng looked at Wang Yuetong and laughed softly. Get out of the way. Wang Yuetong looked calm. Zhong Xiaofeng, I'll give you another chance. Get out of the way now, or I can guarantee that you'll soon end up like Zhong Yue. Zhong Xiaofeng's cousin was also the young master who was beaten into a vegetative state by Wang Xiaoyao a few months ago. For a few months, Zhong Yue had been in a coma, with only one breath left, and he didn't even have consciousness. Zhong Xiaofeng whistled again, but his body didn't move at all. He laughed wildly and said, Amazing, Yuetong is really domineering. You scared me to death. Who do you want to stand up for you? Just by relying on this pretty boy next to you? Or do you want to call your second uncle here? Go and call your second uncle here. Let him have a try to hurt me. Let's see if he dares to do so. You disabled my cousin for a bitch. Do you really think Zhongzhou State belongs to the Wang family of Beihai? Bullshit. He's pursuing Qin Weibai, isn't he? Go back and tell Wang Xiaoyao that Qin Weibai will be a plaything of the Zhong family sooner or later. When I'm tired of her, I'll let other people in the family have a taste. What did you say? Li Tianlan suddenly interrupted Zhong Xiaofeng's wild laughter and asked calmly. Zhong Xiaofeng glanced at Li Tianlan and said with a grim smile, "I said, smack?" Li Tianlan suddenly reached out and slapped Zhong Yue hard in the face. Almost all the people in the area near the bar could hear the crisp sound. This slap did not only hit his face, but also hit his bones. Zhong Xiaofeng, who was more than 1.8 meters tall, was sent flying like a paper man by Li Tianlan's slap. He weighed more than 170 kilograms, so his feet were lifted off the ground. But before he could fly far, Li Tianlan reached out again and pulled his hair. When he subconsciously arched his body, Li Tianlan hit his abdomen with his knee. Teeth and blood spurted directly from Zhong Xiaofeng's mouth. His mouth was completely deformed. He whimpered and wanted to raise his head. There was a little confusion in his eyes. But there was no hesitation in Li Tianlan's actions. They were coherent, dense, precise, and ruthless. A series of actions revealed incomparable decisiveness and violence. Zhong Xiaofeng tried hard to raise his body, but he was pressed down. Li Tianlan hit him hard in the back with his elbow. "Senior brother, don't." Wang Yuedong's slightly deformed voice sounded. With a series of particularly crisp sounds of bones breaking, Zhong Xiaofeng's entire spine was almost completely smashed by this elbow. Without the support of his body, he suddenly fell to the ground like a puddle of mud and completely passed out. Everything happened so fast that the people at table number 1 did not react until Li Tianlan completely destroyed Zhong Xiaofeng's spine. A dull roar suddenly came from table number 1, and a gigantic, burly figure rushed toward Li Tianlan in an instant. The air in the bar suddenly became hot. But before the fire completely rose, Li Tianlan, who grabbed Zhong Xiaofeng with one hand and his fingers almost dug into Zhong Xiaofeng's flesh, moved forward instead of retreating. He directly punched the burly man who rushed toward him. One punch against another. There seemed to be wind and thunder roaring in the air. All the joints in Li Tianlan's body were vibrating at the same time. In an instant, all the strength was condensed in his fist. Bang! In the dull sound, the whole bar seemed to be shaking. The delicate floor tiles under Li Tianlan's feet were completely smashed in an instant. His feet sank into the ground, while the burly figure rushing toward him flew back at a faster speed. He brushed past table number 1 and knocked over a large number of tables and chairs. Zhong Xiaofeng's 2 bodyguards followed closely and rushed toward Li Tianlan from both sides. Li Tianlan's expression was as still as dead water from beginning to end. Human Emperor did not come out. Inside the bar, he directly picked up Zhong Xiaofeng's body and shook it hard. Crack, crack! In an instant, not only his spine, but also the bones of Zhong Xiaofeng's arms, legs, and even fingers were completely smashed. Under the sharp pain, Zhong Xiaofeng, who was originally in a coma, suddenly woke up, but he could not howl. With his mouth completely deformed, he could only let out a dying whimper. One bodyguard was swept by Zhong Xiaofeng and his strong body was swept away. The other bodyguard was kicked in the abdomen by Li Tianlan before he could get close to Li Tianlan. His whole body flew toward the bar counter. The huge force carried his body and directly smashed the marble bar counter. Gravel rolled, wine cabinets collapsed, and all kinds of expensive or ordinary drinks fell down, filling the air with the aroma of wine. It was a mess. Whether it was Wang Yuetong and the others or the guests at table number 1, everyone was dumbfounded. Li Tianlan did not stop. He carried Zhong Xiaofeng's body and strode to table number 1. At table number 1, at the same time, the body of the petite woman at the head suddenly tightened. Li Tianlan picked up Zhong Xiaofeng's feet, swung his whole body up, and smashed him hard on the marble table. Zhong Xiaofeng's head hit the table hard. Table number 1 was completely broken. Wine and fruit plates flew everywhere. Zhong Xiaofeng, who was almost covered in blood, lay in a pile of stones, twitching instinctively. Li Tianlan's expression remained unchanged. He squatted down beside Zhong Xiaofeng and looked at the slightly twitching Zhong Xiaofeng, whose eyes were dim and frightened. He said lightly, "Now you don't need to say anything. I forgot to tell you that the Qin Weibai you mentioned is my woman. Who do you think you are? Who do you think Wang Xiaoyao is? Do you think you are qualified to hit on my woman? You asked for everything that happened today. You deserve it." He slowly stood up and slowly crushed Zhong Xiaofeng's toes one by one, and then the soles of his feet. In the clear sound of bones breaking, he straightened up and looked at the petite woman who was still sitting in the same place with some wine spilled on her. At this moment, Li Tianlan's heart was unprecedentedly calm, but his behavior was also unprecedentedly domineering and fierce. Chapter 55. How do you want to play? I'll play with you to the end today. Combined with Zhong Xiaofeng, the first young master of Huading, who was lying on the ground and no one knew whether he was dead or alive, these words suddenly made him look extremely domineering and tough. Li Tianlan, who didn't know and didn't want to know how crazy his behavior was, sneered, but his eyes were completely emotionless and calm. Extreme calmness often meant extreme madness. This man was a complete lunatic. Gu Yulan, who was soaked in wine, subconsciously curled up, but she stared back at Li Tianlan without flinching. There was no anger or killing intent in her eyes. At least, Li Tianlan only saw a kind of inscrutable seriousness in her eyes, simple and pure. You know me? Gu Yulan asked softly. Her voice was crisp, delicate, and even a little coquettish. It was the kind of voice that could be heard even if she was jumping and cursing. It was extremely harmless. Do you think I'm blind? Li Tianlan asked in a cold tone, glancing at the other young people at table number 1 who had different expressions. In the Sky Academy, Gu Yulan wore a delicate and small mask on her face. Indeed, very few people saw her real face. However, Su Yunzong, the core disciple of Kunlun City who had just been punched away by him, completed the maneuver with her. His powerful body and ferocious appearance were absolutely impressive. In addition to Su Yunzong, there was a man and a woman sitting at table number 1. Not only did Li Tianlan know them, but he also had a deep hatred for them. They were the 2 giants of the former Flames of War in the Sky Academy. Ludong, Tan Shilai. These people could be said to be the key training targets of the young generation of Kunlun City. Now they were surrounded by Gu Yulan, and her body features were so obvious that it was really not difficult to confirm her identity. Tell me, what do you want to play? Here up. Li Tianlan pulled his collar and simply took off his camouflage clothes. He stood in front of Gu Yulan wearing only a combat vest, showing an unforgiving attitude. He had always thought that he was not a person who cared about the overall situation. The glory of the Li family for hundreds of years and the future and grievances of countless veterans in the border camp were all his responsibility. From this point of view, perhaps they were also his overall situation. But Li Tianlan didn't think that for the sake of the so-called big picture, he had to be a coward no matter what he encountered. Not to mention whether it was worth it or not, he couldn't do it based on his character alone. Zhong Xiaofeng insulted Wang Yuetong, but Li Tianlan didn't bother to show up. To put it bluntly, they were not that close. Besides, the Wang family of Beihai was so powerful in Zhongzhou state that he didn't need to show off. But Qin Weibai was his woman. Li Tianlan couldn't swallow the insult for the sake of the big picture when his woman was humiliated. A man who didn't even dare to do anything when his woman was humiliated didn't deserve to talk about the so-called big picture. The appearance of Zhong Xiaofeng, Gu Yulan, and the others, as well as their high-profile provocation, was too much of a coincidence to the extent of being deliberate. Li Tianlan did not intend to meddle in other people's business, but Zhong Xiaofeng dug his own grave by talking about Qin Weibai. Conspiracy? Big picture? General trend? F***ck them all. I'm going to kill you here. Who can stop me? At this moment, Li Tianlan might be a little impulsive and even a little crazy. But at this moment he was also unprecedentedly proud. It was as if he was born with an unyielding character, so tough that it made everyone's scalp numb. You want to play with me? Gu Yulan still looked at Li Tianlan seriously. Her beautiful lips curled up slightly and she said lightly, "Do you deserve it?" She glanced at Li Beidan and Ning Chenxing out of the corner of her eye, and said lightly, "Get out of here, and I can let go of your offense today for the time being. Since you like to play so much, someone will play with you soon." She moved her crossed legs slightly, and casually pointed at Zhong Xiaofeng, who had completely fainted with the tip of her high heels. I forgot to introduce him to you. This is young Master Zhong Xiaofeng, the deputy chief of the Huading Supervision Office, the youngest son of Secretary Zhong, and one of the future political successors of the Zhong family. How do you think the Zhong family will thank you for crippling Zhong Xiaofeng? Behind Li Tianlan, everyone's face became extremely gloomy. Nowadays, undercurrents were surging in Huading, and the 6 groups were ready to make trouble. But anyway, because they occupied the commanding heights of Huading, it was not too much to call the Zhong family the first wealthy family in Huading. And the immortal anchor of the Zhong family was still young and vigorous among the people at the same level as him. He occupied the position of the top leader in Huading, and there was even hope for him to go one step further. This powerful figure in Zhongzhou state was extremely top-notch in both personal integrity and personal ability. The vanguard sent by the Prince Group to occupy Huading could not be mediocre. Judging from the current situation, the most important task for the Zhong family in the next few years was to stabilize the situation in Huading. As long as he could do this well, the big shots of the Prince Group would probably support him to go one step further. This was the overall situation of the Zhong family. So a few months ago, even though Wang Xiaoyao disabled his nephew, he only acted secretly in the Prince Group and did not do anything too out of line. The Prince Group was ready to make trouble now, but it was to get more compensation in the game with the Wang family of Beihai. It had little to do with the Zhong family itself. But no matter how much the Zhong family put the overall situation first, the powerful figure was not a bodhisattva without a temper. He endured it when his nephew was disabled, but a few months later, his son was disabled again. Who could endure it? Even if the Zhong family could endure it, in this situation, he had to do something to maintain his authority and vent the anger that had been suppressed for months. And all the anger and resentment of this big shot would pour out on Li Tianlan without reservation. How could Li Tianlan, who was originally in Huading, bear the anger of a leader of Zhongzhou state and the top leader of Huading? Li Tianlan was still expressionless, but the human emperor had slipped from his sleeve and was tightly held in his hand. You talk a lot of nonsense, Li Tianlan said coldly. Gu Yolan's pupils shrank slightly. Her voice was still delicate as if she was acting coquettishly, but the words she said were not polite. Get out of here before I change my mind. If I really want to play with you, I'm afraid you can't leave today. Isn't it good to live a few more hours? How arrogant you are. Standing behind Li Tianlan, Li Beidian could not help but sneer. Those who don't know might think that Kunlun City is invincible in the world. Today, I just want to play with you, little girl of Kunlun City. So, do you dare to play? Even if Kunlun City is not invincible in the world, it doesn't take much effort to deal with Mount Shu. Li Taishu, don't pretend to be the great Void Sword Master in front of us. Even pretentious Cheng has behaved. Don't you know what you should do? Tan Shilai sneered in a sarcastic tone. Li Tianlan really did not want to argue with these people. But Li Beidian had just started to get angry. He took a deep breath and did not speak. Tianlan? Ning Qianqing, who had been silent all the time, suddenly called out in a low voice. Li Tianlan glanced at Ning Qianqing. Seeing that Ning Qianqing's eyes were obviously inquiring, he nodded slightly. There seemed to be no fluctuation in his eyes, but there was a trace of uncontrollable unwillingness and fighting desire in the depths of his eyes. Ning Qianqing took a deep look at him and nodded slightly. The so-called tacit understanding and communication had been completed inadvertently. He had never thought that Qin Weibai, who was a legend in Huading and even in the entire Zhongzhou state, would be Li Tianlan's woman. And he had never thought that Li Tianlan would hit Zhong Xiaofeng so hard. Even if Zhong Xiaofeng managed to survive such an injury, all his bones would be completely shattered and he would become a completely useless person in the future. And the most fundamental reason for all this was that Zhong Xiaofeng had insulted Qin Weibai. But would everything really be so simple? Maybe it was from the beginning. Because of Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan completely disabled Zhong Xiaofeng. But under normal circumstances, everything should have stopped there. Then, they would start to wait for the Zhong family's revenge. But Li Tianlan took the initiative to provoke Gu Yulan and refused to let her go. This was not something that could be explained by impulse or recklessness. Obviously, Li Tianlan was going to do something. Looking at Li Tianlan's response, Ning Qianqing was even more sure of this. Now, he obviously did not want Gu Yulan to stay out of this storm. Instead, he wanted to drag her completely into it. What on earth was Li Tianlan planning when he had just entered Huading? Would such a move be risky when he did not have a thorough understanding of the situation? Ning Qianqing thought quickly in his mind, but the current time did not allow him to come up with a safe answer. Seeing Li Tianlan nod, Ning Qianqing pursed his lips and took a step forward, saying, Mount Shu may not be as good as Kunlun City, but they can still set up a few sword formations. But what does your Azura path have to offer? Even a trash like you has been focused on training. Azura path really has no one in this generation. Tan Shilai, look at how you are licking Kunlun City's boots. Is this the atmosphere in Azura path, which has a long history, now? Tan Shilai's face was full of murderous intent, but he was not angry at all. He just said disdainfully, Ning Qianqing, you are a loser. How dare you comment on me? Ning Qianqing nodded quietly and said without batting an eyelid, I have indeed lost to you before, but do you want to win again? Like I said, as long as you want, I will accompany you at any time. How about a life-and-death battle? The murderous intent in Tan Shilai's eyes kept jumping, cold and violent. But he forcibly restrained his emotions and turned to look at Gu Yulan, whose expression was calm but hesitant. He and Ning Qianqing could be said to have grown up in the same courtyard. Even if they were not playmates, even if their parents had different standpoints, they were far from treating each other as mortal enemies. Many years ago, the two of them even had a friendship that was neither good nor bad. However, due to some strange circumstances, these two young people, who were once playmates, had become completely irreconcilable enemies. Tan Shilai was looking at Gu Yulan. Ning Qianqing was also looking at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's expression was calm and his eyes were deep. Obviously, he had made up his mind. Ning Qianqing smiled and directly made up his mind. Shilai, I played with your mother. In terms of seniority, it's not too much for you to call me dad, right? Ning Qianqing, you deserve to die. Tan Shilai, who was looking at Gu Yulan, suddenly stood up and stared at Ning Qianqing with red eyes. King say that again. You want to play so badly? Gu Yulan finally opened her mouth and said flatly, Okay, Shilai, you play with them. Her tone was calm, but if one listened carefully, they would find that she was reluctant. Li Tianlan. She had heard this name countless times since the end of the entrance maneuver. Lu Dongyu was saying. Su Yunzong, her follower, was saying. Even Director Gu Yunxia, was saying. She could ignore the opinions of the first two, but she had to pay attention to Gu Yunxia's. Gu Yunxia's meaning was clear. Li Tianlan was likely to become one of the threats to Kunlun City in the future, so she hoped that Gu Yulan would find a suitable opportunity to kill him directly. Gu Yunxia also made it clear that she didn't want to see Li Tianlan return to the Sky Academy to attend classes after the vacation. Given Gu Yunxia's status, it was basically in order for her to say this to Gu Yulan. The plan she gave Gu Yulan was also very simple. She could either kill him directly or disable him in a subtle way. There was no need to explain to kill him directly. It was also not difficult to disable him. According to the information Gu Yulan knew, Li Tianlan had forcibly raised his realm in the entrance maneuver, so he must have been seriously injured. While injured, she could take advantage of this vacation to send people to kill Li Tianlan and force him to keep forcibly raising his realm. When the number of times increased, even if Li Tianlan didn't die, he was bound to be a useless person, and his future achievements would be extremely limited. In terms of candidates, Gu Yulan could choose too many. Lu Dongyu, Tan Shilai, and Su Yunzong were all candidates who could force Li Tianlan to raise his realm. Gu Yulan originally planned to take action when she met Li Tianlan tonight. But judging from Li Tianlan's state when he fought, he didn't look like he was injured at all. As a result, Gu Yulan suddenly became a little hesitant. In her mind, it was best to slowly exhaust Li Tianlan's potential. But when Li Tianlan was in good health, she had to personally take action to force Li Tianlan to raise his realm. In that case, the battle between the two would be a little more risky for her. Therefore, Gu Yulan originally didn't intend to pay attention to Li Tianlan's provocation. Anyway, he had completely disabled Zhong Xiaofeng. Even if she didn't take action, the Zhong family wouldn't let him go. But Li Tianlan was determined to provoke him to the end. Li Baidian and Ning Qianqing began to be eager to take action. In particular, Ning Qianqing's extremely insulting words made Tan Shilai completely lose his mind. At this time, if she still didn't give in, she was afraid that Tan Shilai would have some ideas in his mind. In that case, it was better to take advantage of the situation and not take action against Li Tianlan for the time being. It was also a good choice to first disable Ning Qianqing and make him lose his right-hand man. Okay. Tan Shilai grinned hideously and stared at Ning Qianqing. Tonight, I'll play with you. A life-and-death battle is a life-and-death battle. Loser, you're courting death. Are you sure? Gu Yulan looked at Ning Qianqing's still calm face and said with a frown. Give me 3 minutes. You just need to watch. Tan Shilai twisted his neck and said with resentment in his eyes, Another place? Do you dare to come, drunkard Qing? I don't care. Ning Qianqing's tone was calm. Tan Shilai nodded, pointed at Ning Qianqing, and walked directly out of the bar. Li Tianlan moved his body and said calmly, Let's follow and have a look. Damn it, what's going on? How did this happen when I was away for a while? As soon as Li Tianlan turned around, Zhang Holong's voice came directly to him. He was followed by a large group of scantily dressed girls, and the one closest to him was a stout fat man with cold sweat all over his face. Young Master Zhang, your friend beat young Master Zhong Xiaofeng. Young Master Zhang, I'm begging you. Please help me. You must save me. Beside Zhang Holong, the fat man, who weighed at least 250 kilograms, was trembling all over and said in a pitiful tone. Zhong Xiaofeng? Zhang Holong's eyelids twitched. He glanced at Li Tianlan and then said, Why are you so nervous? Take him first. He pointed at Zhong Xiaofeng's body and said, Take this idiot to the hospital and then close the bar for a few days. Wait for my news about the follow-up, okay? The fat boss surnamed Wu nodded with a sad face, his face pale and terrified. Find someone to call the police and hide yourself first. It's okay. Zhang Holong patted the fat boss on the shoulder, left the group of girls around him, and directly chased after Li Tianlan. Vaguely, Li Baitian's voice sounded in front of them with a hint of amazement. Damn it, I really couldn't tell before. Qianqing is so good at drawing hatred. Tan Shilai's face turned green as soon as he said, Played with your mother. Ha! Tan Shilai? Ning Qianqing? The muscles at the corners of Zhang Holong's mouth twitched violently. Among the people present, except for Ning Qianqing and Tan Shilai, only Zhang Holong knew that Ning Qianqing was not drawing hatred by saying that he had played with Tan Shilai's mother. It was true. Chapter 56. Everyone could clearly feel Tan Shilai's rage that was close to losing his mind. In the hearts of Lu Dongyu and others who were familiar with him, Tan Shilai always seemed to be gloomy and vicious. Of course, he was angry, but it was never as obvious as it was today. At this moment, Tan Shilai's eyes were red and his breathing was messy and rapid. The cold, killing intent was constantly brewing in him, making him look like a beast choosing its prey. He strode out of the bar. The waitress in front of the door, who was wearing a low-cut cheongsam, saw his strange look and took a step forward subconsciously. Before she could ask, Tan Shilai had slapped her and knocked her out on the ground. He panted and kept muttering to himself. He walked to his car and started it. He glanced at Ning Qianqing, who was following him, and left directly. Ning Qianqing followed him without hesitation, his face expressionless. After walking out of the bar, Ning Qianqing drove Wang Yuetong's red sports car. This time, Wang Yuetong did not ask for anything and let Li Tianlan get in Ning Qianqing's car. She drove behind with the others. Gu Yulan and others drove with Tan Shilai. The two teams divided into two teams, left the bar and ran wildly in the city. From beginning to end, neither Li Tianlan nor Gu Yulan cared about Zhong Xiaofeng's injury. It seemed that the dying young master of the Zhong family had completely passed. But in fact, it was just the beginning. In the sports car, Ning Qianqing drove behind Tan Shilai's Lexus and could not help but glance at Li Tianlan again. Li Tianlan looked at the lights outside the window with a calm expression. Just when Ning Qianqing could not help but ask, he suddenly said softly, "Are you sure?" Ning Qianqing took the cigarette that Li Tianlan handed to him and lit it. He took a deep breath and said slowly, 100%. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and glanced at Ning Qianqing. "What I said is true," Ning Qianqing said softly in a somewhat complicated tone. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said with a smile, "I believe you. I said I played with his mother, and it's true." Cough cough, cough cough cough, cough. Li Tianlan had just inhaled a puff of smoke when he heard this and suddenly coughed violently. The thick smoke swirled in his throat, making his voice hoarse. "What did you say?" Ning Qianqing's eyes were in a trance, with sadness, pleasure, and a trace of inexplicable helplessness. He glanced at the dumbfounded Li Tianlan and said with a smile, "To be exact, Tan Shilai's mother was my first woman. Tianlan, you should know who I am, right?" Li Tianlan couldn't come back to his senses at all. He just nodded subconsciously. His roommate in front of him was more than just an officer of the Border Praetorian Corps. In terms of family background, he was a Real Tiger from a family of generals. General Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, one of the 5 theater of operations in Zhengzhou State, was Ning Qianqing's father. However, for some unknown reason, Ning Qianqing had completely broken off relations with his family a few years ago and joined the Border Praetorian Corps. In these few years, he had not returned home even once. Therefore, when people looked at the younger generation of the 6 groups, they would subconsciously regard Ning Qianqing as a member of the Dongqing clan and the Giant Group instead of the Ning family and the Southeast Group. Could it be that Ning Qianqing had broken off relations with his family because of Tan Shilai's mother? Li Tianlan felt a headache coming on. Tan Shilai's father was Tan Qinghua, the deputy commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations and a capable general of the Prince Group. It could be said that he was Ning Ziyuan's main opponent and deputy in the Eastern Theater of Operations. Such a big shot in the military had been cuckolded by Ning Qianqing. What the hell was going on? Back then, Tan Shilai's mother was a famous beauty in our yard and even in the entire Jinling city. Although she was no longer young, she took good care of herself and looked like she was in her late 20s. I was still in high school when I fell in love with her. I have long forgotten how it started. Ning Qianqing said calmly, "But I used some tricks to get that woman." Tianlan, if you say that I'm despicable, I don't think there's anything to deny. I was indeed despicable. I was still young at that time and my thoughts were a little extreme. I always thought that she deserved it. Of course, even now, I don't think she's innocent. But now that I mention it, I really can't find the hatred I had in the past. Does Tan Shilai know about this? Li Tianlan asked. He couldn't tell what he was feeling in his heart. Ning Qianqing twitched the corner of his mouth and revealed a twisted smile. Once, it even happened in front of Tan Shilai, in his parents' bedroom, under his father's wedding photo. He's not blind, how could he not know? Not only him, but even Tan Qinghua knew later. I played with her for 2 years, how can there be an impenetrable wall? It's normal that he knows. Hearing the ferocity in Ning Qianqing's tone, Li Tianlan smiled helplessly and said, And then? Nothing. I was with her for about 2 years. In the first year, Tan Shilai saw it, but I don't know what he was thinking, so he didn't tell his father. Later, I became even worse. As long as Tan Qinghua wasn't around, I would go to his house. Tan Shilai even rarely went home. If I hadn't deliberately thrown the woman's underwear in Tan Qinghua's car after we were done, he probably wouldn't have found out. Later, I left Jinling. In less than a year, Tan Shilai's parents got divorced. It was said that the woman went to Canada and left me her contact information, but I threw it away. Ning Qianqing took a big drag on his cigarette and laughed wildly. But Tianlan, believe it or not, I'm not bragging. If I still have that woman's contact information, I only need to make a phone call and that woman will immediately rush over from Canada and let me do whatever I want. Do you believe it? Li Tianlan didn't say whether he believed it or not. He just stared at Ning Qianqing, whose eyes were bitter, and asked, "Why did you do that?" "I used to have a sister." Ning Qianqing was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, "Used to? Now she's dead. She was gang-raped and lost a lot of blood." "Tan Shilai? Heh, then your father at that time, for the so-called unity and promotion, for the interests of the whole family, what's the big deal about a daughter who isn't his own daughter?" The topic ended there. The car fell into complete silence. This story, which was not very exciting and even a little sad, was undoubtedly the cause of Ning Qianqing's break with the Ning family and the beginning of his feud with Tan Shilai. Li Tianlan opened the window. The night wind whistled into the carriage, clearing his mind at once. "So, no matter what, sooner or later, I'll kill Tan Shilai sooner or later. He should have died a few years ago. If it weren't for his mother begging me to show mercy in bed, I wouldn't have lost to him that time. I lost to him once to give face to that woman. This time he must die." Ning Qianqing suddenly said, "In fact, I also want to thank you. If you hadn't helped me find this opportunity, I wouldn't have done it now even if I wanted to kill him." "How do you know that I'm not using you?" Li Tianlan said flatly. "You and I are brothers. How can you use me?" Ning Qianqing shook his head and narrowed his eyes. "If you need me to do it, I'll do it and avenge myself. It's killing two birds with one stone. Not only me, but Li Beidian probably thinks so too. There are so many interests and calculations between brothers. Your business is our business. But I'm curious, what do you want to do? I can understand that you crippled Zhong Xiaofeng, but you keep provoking Gu Yulan. Do you have any other plans?" "Of course I have other plans." Li Tianlan chuckled and said, "But it's not so complicated. I just want to take this opportunity to make it big and see if I can find out someone's background. It'll be good for us in the future. As for why I asked you to do it, I've already crippled Zhong Xiaofeng and offended the Prince Group. How can I attack Kunlun City first? That's not finding out, but courting death. But I want Kunlun City to join in, so I can only ask you to take the initiative to attack. I hoped that Gu Yulan could have a life-and-death fight with me directly, but I didn't expect that your words would completely infuriate Tan Shilai. Although it's not the best result, it doesn't seem bad now. Finding out." Ning Qianqing was deep in thought. "You killed Tan Shilai, which may involve the people behind you. In a way, this is what I want to see most. If I only crippled Zhong Xiaofeng, the people behind me may not be willing to protect me. But if one or two other superpowers are involved, the situation will be different. You have the giant group and the southeast group behind you. From this point of view, you're the best candidate." Li Tianlan was completely telling the truth. He looked at Ning Qianqing's profile and said frankly, "If you don't want to, stop the car now. It's not too late." Ning Qianqing looked at Li Tianlan with a strange look in his eyes. After a while, he chuckled and said, "The Border Praetorian Corps has never been afraid of trouble. No one will say that I'm wrong to stand up for my brothers and comrades. But I'm curious, whose background do you want to find out?" "A lot of people, in the open and in the dark, good and bad, even including you and Beidian." Li Tianlan looked out of the window and said softly, "Qianqing, I'm different from you. I come from a place where even birds don't shit. I have some family background, but they're not of much use for the time being. So I'm not used to hooting. You talk about the Wang family of Beihai, the four gods of Zhongzhou State, the Six, the Dongqing clan, and Sai City. I really don't understand. Of course, now I understand, but it's no different from not understanding. You can't understand the panic in my heart when I heard you talk about Zhongzhou State. I grew up in Zhongzhou State, but I always felt out of place in the entire Zhongzhou State. After I came to Huading, this feeling became more obvious. Because of an elder in my family, I wanted to integrate myself. What happened tonight is an opportunity. Maybe it's not good enough, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to get anything from what happened tonight. I just want to test someone's bottom line and see things better. I can't see anything now. This feeling is not good, really not good." Ning Qianqing was silent. The two teams of cars gradually drove out of the bustling city, and their speed was getting faster and faster. Have you ever thought that even if you get the force behind me involved, the person behind you is still not willing to protect you? What will you do? Ning Qianxing suddenly asked. Zhong Xiaofeng has a high status in the Zhong family. His injury tonight will definitely make the big tree in the Zhong family furious. Zhong Xiaofeng deserves it. Li Tianlan's tone was calm. Whether the person behind me is willing to protect me or not, he won't have a second result. He took out his mobile phone from his pocket and dialed a number. While waiting for the phone to be connected, he said softly, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Ning Qianxing nodded and said no more. Li Tianlan's phone was quickly connected. A gentle and elegant voice came directly into his ears. "Tianlan, what's the matter?" "I'm in trouble." Li Tianlan closed the window and said very straightforwardly. On the other end of the phone, Zhuang Huayang's voice seemed to be a little surprised. He said with a smile, "It's only the second day of the holiday. What kind of trouble can you cause?" "I disabled Zhong Xiaofeng." Li Tianlan said lightly, "It seems to be Zhong Yongming's son." Zhong Yongming, one of the members of the Zhongzhou State Decision-Making Committee, the #1 leader of Huading, and the towering tree of the entire Zhong family. Zhuang Huayang's breath suddenly stopped. He was silent for a full half a minute before he uttered a word. "Zhong Xiaofeng." Li Tianlan said again. Zhuang Huayang took a deep breath and then said with a wry smile, "How is his injury?" "His bones are all broken. He can live, but it's impossible for him to do anything else." Li Tianlan told the truth. "You're really good at causing trouble." Zhuang Huayang gasped. It was meaningless to ask why at this point. Zhuang Huayang was decisive and said directly, "What are you going to do?" "I'm worth it." Li Tianlan said calmly, "The current situation is, what should we do?" Zhuang Huayang was silent for a while. Li Tianlan sat in the car, looking out the window at the rapidly retreating lights and the night sky, waiting expressionlessly. He was not crazy enough to disable Zhong Xiaofeng just to test Zhuang Huayang and the academics. Even if Zhuang Huayang didn't talk to him, even if he didn't join the academics, even if he was still an ordinary freshman with no backing, even if he didn't sleep with Qin Weibai last night, he deserved to end up like this just because of Zhong Xiaofeng's words. She was the most beautiful scenery in his heart, a scenery that no one could insult. He didn't have the so-called big picture. His big picture was to protect all the people or things that he thought were worth cherishing. The glory of the Li family was important, but was his own woman not important? Weighing the two? How should he weigh it? Why should he compromise? Tonight, not to mention Zhong Xiaofeng, even if Zhong Xiaofeng's father dared to say such words, Li Tianlan would also dare to take action. At all costs. Now that things had come to this point, Li Tianlan naturally wanted to test the academic support for him. Whether the academics would protect him or not, Li Tianlan would not regret what happened tonight. If there was no support, facing the possible consequences, Li Tianlan could only take an unconventional approach. "Worth it?" Zhuang Huayang asked after a long silence. "Worth it?" Li Tianlan compared himself to an object. His tone was calm, without any fluctuation. "I'm willing to support you," Zhuang Huayang said slowly, "and it's not just an intention. I will also take practical actions and attitudes. But I can only represent myself. I'm not sure about the Academy's attitude." He paused and continued, "I'll call the chief right away." The current situation in Huading was extremely sensitive, and the Zhong family was the focus of attention. In recent months, two core figures of the young generation of the Zhong family had been disabled. In the current situation, it was really hard to predict how the Zhong family would react. If the Zhong family insisted on the Sky Academy handing over Li Tianlan with a tough attitude, there was really not much he could do without the support of the academics. Zhuang Huayang looked serious and pondered. Facing the pressure of the Zhong family and the Prince Group, how would the academics choose? Every possibility was possible. Perhaps the academics would be inclined to hand over Li Tianlan and settle the conflict with the Zhong family. Li Tianlan had unlimited potential. The wind and thunder veins meant a bright future, and the academics would know that. But the problem was that no matter how terrifying the wind and thunder veins were, it took time to grow. Li Tianlan's realm was too low. Could the 10-year plan within the group be completed by Li Tianlan? Was it worth it to have a fierce conflict with the Zhong family for Li Tianlan? But if the chief decided to support Li Tianlan, Zhuang Huayang would not be surprised. 10 years was neither a long time nor a short time. Anything could happen. At least before today, the group had high hopes for Li Tianlan, who had just joined. And a few months ago, Wang Xiaoyao also disabled Zhong Yue of the Zhong family. At present, the Wang family of Beihai was also facing a certain degree of pressure. If the academics wanted to protect Li Tianlan, they should be able to reach an agreement with the Wang family of Beihai to some extent, and it would be convenient to operate. More importantly, although Li Tianlan's grandfather, Li Honghe, had been trapped at the border for many years, if they could take this opportunity to get the gratitude of an invincible realm expert like Li Honghe, the academics would never refuse. What would the chief choose? Zhuang Huayang frowned and pondered. Where you now? Go back to the Sky Academy immediately. I'll negotiate with the Zhong family. Zhuang Huayang sighed and asked in a low voice. On the way. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes with a smile and said slowly, Qianxing and Tan Shilai have some grievances to settle. A life and death battle. Ning Qianxing, the Dongqing clan. Zhuang Huayang thought of the phone call he received from Zhongyuan province on the first day of school and the strange instructions. His eyes instantly lit up. If this trouble was handled well, not only would it not be a problem for the academic faction, it would even become an opportunity for the academic faction. Open your credit statistics form. I'll go there now. Zhuang Huayang took a deep breath and said in a low voice. Li Tian said, and hesitated. What about the chief? I'll persuade him, try my best. Zhuang Huayang's voice was close to a promise. Li Tianlan was slightly touched. No matter how many inside stories there were about him joining the academics, at least when it came to Zhuang Huayang, the old headmaster was really good to him. He took out a cigarette and lit it, then said with a smile, Headmaster, I'll give you a bargaining chip to make it easier for you to persuade him. Zhuang Huayang, who had gradually figured out some things, was in a good mood. He said with a smile, I know you have a trump card. Tell me. My realm is low, but it wasn't like this before. Li Tianlan looked out of the window and said softly, I once entered the thunder-shocking realm. Although it was only less than half an hour, my realm was real. He paused and continued, I was 17 years old that year, in the desert of Beijiang. Zhuang Huayang subconsciously held his breath, but his heart was beating wildly. A 17-year-old thunder-shocking realm, Li Tianlan slowly opened the watch on his wrist and said, You know what I mean, right? Of course. Zhuang Huayang said without hesitation, It's not hard to guess. Wait for my news. I'll come to you right away. Li Tianlan silently put away his phone, but his eyes gradually focused. The surrounding lights gradually became sparse. In front of the car, Tan Shilai's Lexus finally stopped. Chapter 57. Li Tianlan observed the surrounding environment immediately. Both of them were driving very fast. About half an hour had passed while chatting with Ning Qianxing. When the car stopped, Li Tianlan realized that they had arrived at the mountain. There were no high mountains in Huading. It was more like a big slope than a mountain. It was dozens of meters above sea level at most. Even standing on the top of the mountain, there was no heroic spirit of climbing high and looking into the distance. The only good thing about this place was that it was quiet. No matter how they fought, no one would disturb them. It was the 15th of the month and there was a full moon in the sky. Far away from the lights, the barren mountain was shrouded in the moonlight and looked bright. Where are we? Li Tianlan's eyes had adapted to the light on the top of the mountain and he glanced around. The lights were sparse and misty in the distance. There were mountains and forests everywhere, and there were no landmarks. Li Tianlan could only be sure that he was in the northwest of Huading, but he had no idea where he was exactly. This is Mount Tong. Ning Qianxing came to Li Tianlan and whispered after getting off the car. What's so special about it? Li Tianlan asked Ning Qianxing, but he couldn't help looking at the Lexus in front of him. The door of the Lexus had been opened and Tan Shilai got out with a ferocious face. The killing intent was brewing all over his body. Obviously, Mount Tong was the place he chose for the life and death duel. This place was at least dozens of kilometers away from the bar. For this duel, they had gone around in a big circle. If it wasn't for the special significance of this place, it would have been much better to settle the duel nearby than here. Look over there. Ning Qianqing smiled and pointed in a direction. Li Tianlan followed his hand and looked over. In his sight, it was a forest bathed in the bright moonlight, but he could vaguely see some lights. That's the base of Huading's Special Operations Bureau. Ning Qianqing explained, it's about 2 kilometers away from here. Huading's Special Operations Bureau. Li Tianlan naturally knew about this hidden and independent agency. In Zhongzhou State, the Special Operations Bureau was nominally under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of State Security and the Ministry of National Defense, but in fact, it was only responsible to Kunlun City, the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Kunlun City was the highest leading institution of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, and the Special Operations Bureau scattered throughout Zhongzhou State was the extension of the special warfare system's power. Different from the civilian forces, this unknown institution represented the official voice of the entire special warfare system. Currently, the Special Operations Bureau was a provincial-level unit with 1 chief and 2 deputies. In theory, there were not many restrictions on the number of personnel. The director enjoyed the treatment of a governor-general, but his existence was kept secret and was not exposed. He was the highest authority in the special warfare system of a province. In some particularly important cities, there would be a special operations division, and the division chief would enjoy the same treatment as the head of the local administration. Huading was not a particularly important city, but one of the most important cities and windows to the outside world in the entire Zhongzhou State. Its political and economic status was higher than that of ordinary provinces. Therefore, the Special Operations Bureau was still set up in Huading, and it was one of the largest Special Operations Bureau in the entire Zhongzhou State. The director was at least an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, with the rank of general, who enjoyed the treatment of a governor. In the entire Zhongzhou State, he was a real bigwig. So, Li Tianlan asked. He did not know what the Special Operations Bureau had to do with this final battle. I'm not from the Eastern Theater of Operations, so I don't know the details. It should be that the elites of the Eastern Theater of Operations are going to carry out a military anti-terrorism exercise with the Special Operations Bureau in Huading in the next few days. This area can be considered as the scope of the exercise. Ning Qianqing looked at Tan Shilai, who was nearby, with pity in his eyes. Now my father and Tan Shilai's father are probably having a meeting in that base. He wants to kill me so that he can take my body to provoke my father, right? At the same time, he can let them vent their anger. What about you? Li Tianlan looked at Ning Qianqing. What will happen if you kill Tan Shilai? Will you take his body there too? Of course I will. What else can I do but run? Ning Qianqing scolded him with a smile. Do you think I'm stupid enough to walk into a trap? He is more like a politician than a soldier. These 2 years are a critical period for him. This time, whether I live or die, he won't care about me. So, Tianlan, you probably can't count on me to drag the Ning family into this. Maybe if I kill Tan Shilai, we will be hunted down by the Tan family all over the world. Isn't that exciting? When talking about his father, Ning Qianqing's tone was calm. It was not resentment or relief, but a real and thorough calmness. An emotion that was even more chilling than resentment. Li Tianlan didn't tease him. He just looked into his eyes and said seriously, you treat me as a brother, so I'll tell you the truth. Even if the worst happens tonight, you'll be fine. At worst, I'll leave the Sky Academy. But you have to be careful. Tan Shilai is 1 realm higher than you. If you are killed, it will be too late for me to do anything. Ning Qianqing took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said something similar to what Tan Shilai said in the bar, give me 3 minutes. At the same time, Tan Shilai's suppressed and extremely ferocious voice sounded. Have you said enough last words? Drunbility Cheng, I don't have time to waste with you here. Wang Yuetong and Gu Yulan, who were a little behind, had already driven up the mountain. The two teams stood on opposite sides of each other, less than 100 meters away from each other, ready to fight. Ning Qianqing turned around calmly. He thought of his sister who had been closest to him since he was a child. He thought of her innocence, her despair and helplessness when she died, and Tan Shilai's ugliness and viciousness when pretending to be innocent. He thought of the woman's desire and shame when she was under him. He thought of his father, Ning Ziyuan's majesty and indifference at that time. The night wind whistled in the mountain. The bright moonlight shone on the valley. With Ning Qianqing as the center, a chill suddenly rose on Mount Tong. He gently clenched his fists. The sound of ice freezing spread through the whole space. The grass under everyone's feet was suddenly covered with a layer of white frost. Ning Qianqing's eyes were completely focused. He said calmly, "Make your move." F*CKU. Tan Shilai grinned hideously. As soon as the first word came out of his mouth, his figure had already rushed forward. The raging fire spread along with his figure. The white frost under his feet completely melted. As he passed, the whole patch of grass was burning. The sound of ice freezing in the air became more and more obvious. The sword intent was dense. An ice wall suddenly rose around Ning Qianqing, blocking Tan Shilai's way. In the roaring fire, Tan Shilai did not slow down at all. A long saber condensed from flames appeared in his hand. Obviously, he had not reached the stage of condensing fire into a weapon. The shape of the long saber in his hand was a little loose. However, Tan Shilai, who was sprinting with all his strength, did not care about it. He held the saber with both hands, leaped into the air, and fiercely chopped down. The blade of the long flame saber suddenly soared. The blade expanded from 1 meter to 3 meters, and then to 5 meters. The more it expanded, the looser the shape of the blade became. The flame at the front was drifting and almost disappeared. However, the blazing temperature kept rising. The loosely shaped blade chopped down at a high speed. Not only the ice wall in front of him, but also Ning Qianqing was shrouded by the blade. The flame was shapeless, but when the blade chopped down on the ice wall, the entire ice wall turned into countless pieces in an instant and flew in all directions. Ning Qianqing hurriedly retreated. A second ice wall rose in front of him, but the broken ice turned into countless ice swords in the blazing temperature. The ice swords formed a formation. The sword intent was dense, undulating, and continuous. Li Tunlan stared at every detail of the fight between the two and focused all his attention. Tan Shilai comes from the Azura path, and it can be said that he has received all the teachings. In recent years, the Azura path has been playing the most loyal lackey of Kunlun City, but it is also a martial arts force that has produced experts of the invincible realm. Their unique skills are extremely powerful, and they take the extreme path of giving up all defense and focusing only on offense. This move is called Selfless Killing Saber. It completely forgets itself and pursues the ultimate lethality. The unique skills of the Azura path are basically like this. They are a group of lunatics who don't take their lives seriously. Tan Shilai can be regarded as a person who has received the teachings of the Azura path. Wang Yuetong appeared beside Li Tianlan and explained softly. "What about Qianqing?" Li Tianlan asked with a slight frown. He only had a superficial understanding of the major martial arts forces in Zhongzhou State and was far less familiar with them than Wang Yuetong. Azura Path was named after Azura, which showed how bloodthirsty and ferocious its fighting style was. In Li Tianlan's opinion, the best way to deal with such an opponent was to fight the opponent's attack head-on. If he took one step back, he might fall back step by step until he had no chance to fight back in the end. Qianqing should be accumulating strength. Wang Yuetong felt more and more ice sword intent condensing in the field. She said with uncertainty, "I don't know what he wants to do next." The second ice wall in the field was smashed by the saber again. Ice pieces flew all over the sky. Ning Qianqing looked calm and the third ice wall appeared again. Tan Shilai waved his saber and attacked wildly. His eyes were blood red. At this moment, he was like a complete madman who kept chasing and attacking. His body was full of flaws, But he didn't care about them. He only wanted to attack, destroy, and kill. A large number of ice swords surrounded Ning Qianqing. More and more, the terrifying sword intent became more and more obvious. But he kept retreating and did not fight back. Was he unable to fight back? Or was he waiting for an opportunity? Li Tianlan took a deep breath and stared at the battlefield calmly. He was ready to fight with all his strength at any time. Don't worry. Qianqing is not as weak as you think. Wang Yuetong said, the quintessential unique technique of Jade Pool is the three-sword rain, which is also their most basic unique technique. Ning Qianqing is Dongqing Wudi's henchman. He has probably joined Jade Pool in recent years. Whether in terms of foundation or the power of unique techniques, Jade Pool is not inferior to Azura Path. Li Tianlan glanced at her and said nothing. It's true that Mount Shu has sword intent. But at least for now, it seems that Mount Shu is living off its past achievements. The eldest brother of Mount Shu has been stuck in the half-step invincible realm for many years and never made a breakthrough. In the past few decades, no invincible realm expert has appeared in Mount Shu. But in recent decades, Jade Pool has produced 2 invincible realm experts. Jade Pool's sword is also showing signs of surpassing Mount Shu's. If Qianqing has joined Jade Pool, it's not that he can't break through the current situation. He's deliberately accumulating strength and sword. Wang Yuetong pointed at Ning Qianqing and said, Senior brother, look. There are more and more swords around him. It seems that he intends to wait until he has accumulated enough sword intent and explode all at once to kill with one strike. Chapter 58. 2 chapters are published in a row, so there's one more ahead. Don't miss it, the 3rd chapter is at 7 p.m. One outbreak, one fatal blow. Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong and couldn't help saying, it's quite similar to the unique skill of your Wang family of Beihai. It's just similar in appearance. Wang Yuetong shook her head. The essence is completely different. It's like a fight between ordinary martial artists who haven't entered the 4 realms of martial arts. The same punch and kick can be exerted in different ways. The 5th ice wall was broken. Li Tianlan was about to speak when his pupils suddenly contracted. Ning Qianqing, who had been holding back, suddenly took a step forward. Counterattack. A large number of ice swords whizzing around him straightened in an instant. All the ice swords lined up neatly and rushed toward Tan Shilai like a torrent. It was one of the 3 sword rains of Jade Pool. Floating sword rain. This was almost the most orderly sword rain that Li Tianlan had ever seen. It was so dense that it looked like a disciplined army or a delicate and magnificent sword formation. The wind in the night had completely disappeared. Everyone could only hear the fierce whistling of countless sword rain piercing through the air. It was bone-chilling and full of killing intent. The first ice swords that rushed to Tan Shilai exploded almost at the same time. The sword rain behind them was endless, hitting the flames on Tan Shilai's body one after another. Tan Shilai was still moving forward. The flames on his body were extinguished, and the long flame saber in his hand was blurred. But he was still moving forward without stopping. Li Tianlan sighed softly. Tan Shilai's character aside, at least his dedication to martial arts and fighting was impressive enough. Despicable. Wang Yuetong's expression suddenly changed and she shouted angrily. In the center of the battlefield, Tan Shilai, who was getting closer and closer to Ning Qianqing, suddenly strode forward. Bastard, go to hell. He suddenly laughed wildly and raised the blade in his hand. As he raised his arm, the originally blurry flaming long saber in his hand suddenly became several times more condensed than before. At the same time, the 2 of them were surrounded by rolling flames, and several huge flaming sabers appeared out of thin air. Although they were not as numerous as the sword rain, they were much more powerful. More than a dozen long sabers completely blocked Ning Qianqing's escape route. The air was twisted by the burning flames. More than a dozen long sabers fell at the same time and hacked at Ning Qianqing, a supreme skill of the Azura Dao. Light and Dust. It was a name that didn't sound very sharp, but it was the best move in the Azura path to seal the enemy. The most important thing was that this move could not be used by an expert who had just entered the fire-flaming realm. Tan Shilai is not only in the breakthrough phase of the fire-flaming realm. He has broken through, so he should be in the stabilization phase now. Only in this way can he barely use the move Light with Dust. Wang Yuetong said in a hurry. Li Tianlan subconsciously took a step forward. But as soon as he took a step, a line of fire suddenly appeared in front of him. The line of fire quickly rose and turned into a curtain of fire. Gu Yulan stared at him from a distance, but her voice rang clearly in his ear. Do you want to die? Wang Yuetong pulled Li Tianlan's hand and said softly, Don't worry, Qianqing may not lose. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth slightly, ready to go all out at any time. In his line of sight, Ning Qianqing suddenly let out a furious roar as he faced the flaming long sabers coming at him from all directions. The rain of swords whistled and surged, shooting in all directions. At this moment, he had also given up on defense and directed all of his swords towards the flaming blades in the air. No retreat. Ning Qianqing did not retreat at all. Instead, he went straight forward. An expert at the peak of the ice-condensing realm who had no defense ability was attacking an expert in the fire-flaming realm. Tan Shilai's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement. He laughed and stretched his limbs. A burst of crackling sounds rang out in his body. In an instant, Tan Shilai was completely wrapped in a large area of flames. Blood-bathing Azura. Wang Yuetong and Li Beidian spoke at the same time. Li Tianlan did not know what blood-bathing Azura was, but he could see how powerful this unique skill of Tan Shilai's was. To be exact, this was not a unique skill that could instantly increase the lethality, but a unique skill that could improve one's fighting state. At least in a short time, all the joints and muscles in Tan Shilai's body would be fully mobilized, making his strength and speed more terrifying. This was also a way of burning potential. How long this state could last completely depended on the user's willpower and physical strength. The Li family also had a similar unique skill. But this move, Blood-bathing Azura, focused on combat strength and needed to burn potential. The unique skill of the Li family, on the other hand, focused on momentum. Pure momentum consumed willpower. The distance between the two sides was instantly shortened. Only Tan Shilai's roar could be heard on the battlefield. Blood-bathing Azura could be said to be the core inheritance of Azura Path. It could be used from the fire-flaming realm to the invincible realm. In a short time, his bones and muscles had been used to the extreme. Intense pain spread all over his body. Almost in the blink of an eye, the intense pain made Tan Shilai completely lose his mind. He only wanted to fight and completely tear all the opponents in front of him to pieces. Tear them to pieces. This was the most worthy way for Ning Qianqing to die. Only by dying like this could Tan Shilai wash away the shame he had suffered over the years. The long flame saber in the air disappeared. The sword rain disappeared. The moment the two were about to collide, a thin layer of ice suddenly appeared on Ning Qianqing's body. The thin ice melted and condensed. The flame went out and burned again. Their bodies collided fiercely. Ice and fire splashed in an instant. The sound of fists and feet colliding suddenly rang and disappeared. In Tan Shilai's hoarse roar, Ning Qianqing's figure flew out of the fire directly, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Qianqing! Li Tianlan stepped over the fire curtain and was about to attack with all his strength. It happened almost at the same second. Ning Qianqing's body shook violently in the air and he spat out another mouthful of blood. There was suddenly a glaring ice light between his hands. There was no sword rain. There was no sword. There was only a pale and glaring ice light that grew with the extension of his hands. The broken ice appeared in his hands and disappeared in an instant. At this moment, Ning Qianqing seemed to be holding a light in his hands. An overbearing and sharp sword energy formed with the light in his hands. Tan Shilai, whose eyes were red, roared and rushed forward, trying to tear his opponent to pieces. Ning Qianqing, who had been sent flying, was about to land. He stretched his hands to the limit and then suddenly closed them. In an instant, there seemed to be a pale rainbow shooting out from between his hands. The light extended to the limit. 5 meters. 10 meters. 15 meters. Ning Qianqing's body fell to the ground. He closed his eyes and coughed up blood, not even looking at the result. This was the most powerful sword move he could use at present. Although it was very forceful and had many flaws, he still used it. This was the unique skill of the Jade Pool Sword Sutra. It was derived from the 3 sword rains, but its status was higher than the 3 sword rains. Heaven-breaking rainbow sword. Tan Shilai's roar stopped abruptly. The white rainbow almost ignored the distance and the fire. The overbearing sword intent completely condensed and pierced through his chest. Fair and square. Fresh blood spurted out. His entire chest had been completely torn apart by the sword. Li Tianlan paused and then rushed to Ning Qianqing again. In the battlefield, Tan Shilai opened his mouth but no words came out. His body shook and fell to the ground, bringing up a large amount of black dust after the fire had burned out. Lying on the ground, Ning Qianqing stretched out his hand with difficulty, crushed a button on his shirt, and poured some powder from the button into his mouth. "Qianqing, how are you?" Li Tianlan looked at Ning Qianqing, who was almost covered in blood, and then at Wang Yuetong. He said without hesitation, "Do you have any medicine that can help Qianqing's injury?" "Oh, you..." "Yes." Wang Yuetong quickly glanced at Li Tianlan, as if she wanted him to owe her more. She took out a delicate small box from her pocket and opened it in front of Li Tianlan. There were more than 10 small secret compartments in the box, and in each compartment were some powders of different colors. These are all useful to him. "Are you sure you want to owe me?" Wang Yuetong said calmly. "Don't talk nonsense. Let him eat it." Li Tianlan answered without any hesitation. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered slightly and she directly handed the small box to Li Tianlan. The corner of Ning Qianqing's mouth moved. Before he could say anything, Li Tianlan had squatted down and poured every kind of powder in the box into his mouth. "I'm a spendthrift. I won't die." Ning Qianqing finally spoke in a weak voice. "Don't talk so much and take care of your injury," Li Tianlan said crisply, his tone almost like an order. Ning Qianqing shook his head slightly and said softly, "I'm going to call the marshal." At this time, he did not choose to call his father, Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations of Zhongzhou State. Instead, he chose to call the marshal of their border Praetorian Corps. He took out his cell phone, dialed a number, and waited quietly for the call to be connected. Li Tianlan squatted on the ground and raised his head subconsciously. The moonlight above the firmament was crystal clear, bright and gentle. In an environment that seemed to have calmed down, Li Tianlan's heartbeat gradually accelerated. He could clearly feel that for him, it was a different story. The storm was approaching. The general trend was approaching. Thank you for your support. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.